Welcome to the January Design Review Committee meeting. This time I'd like to call the meeting to order. The DRC is a subcommittee of the Historic Zoning Commission. This meeting is informal and designed to guide applicants through the process of obtaining a certificate of appropriateness or COA for projects within the city's historic district in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines. Applicant participation in this meeting is voluntary but highly recommended, and changes made or suggestions taken by the applicant based on the discussions with the DRC are the applicant's choice, but the DRC makes no representation as to whether any changes or suggestions made during the meeting will be approved by the voting body, which is the Historic Zoning Commission. This afternoon we have 7 items on the agenda. When the item's called, please come up, introduce yourself, and generally describe your item in about 2 to 3 minutes. All right, item number 1, discussion of front porch alterations at 125 South Margin Street. And the applicant I have listed here is Greg Dvorak. Is anybody here for that project yet? I'll tell you what, let's go to item 2 then, and maybe we'll circle back, if that's all right with everybody. So let's go to discussion of alterations courtyard at 159 First Avenue North, Brandon Pretty. Mr. Pretty, good afternoon. Good.
Hello, I'm Brandon Pretty with 906 Studio Architects. Okay, what's up? So, this is an updated design of something we discussed at DRC a couple months ago. We took feedback, very helpful on direction, on things we tried to do. Really, what we heard was, I think Ms. Pierce talked about making a little more related to the human. So we tried to kind of pare back the modern bent of that a little bit, bring the curves down, alter some of the detail within the steel itself, and just create a little softer overall feel. That was the term we kept coming back to, is softening the whole thing.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it.
Not yet. Okay. Let's hear from staff, their comments here, and then we'll start some discussion. Elizabeth?
Thank you. So thank you to the applicant for returning to another DRC to discuss the proposed design of the arbor top at the courtyard entrance point to Harpeth Square. To recap the history of this item, in 2022, I'll pull this up, this arbor top was what was approved. It was a wooden flat top arbor. And then this item returned to the Historic Zoning Commission in March of 2024, and this was the proposed design here, and then returned this past November with this proposed design. And so with what is currently presented, the overall height and size, there are 2 options that are up for discussion. The 2 options appear to be the overall same height and size. However, the inlay design is different. Within the design, a sign is also proposed. The material is still proposed to be a metal. The arches are proposed to be installed 220 feet from 2nd Avenue North and approximately 100 feet from Main Street. And the guidelines would recommend that site and setting alterations should be considered as appropriate when they are undertaken in locations that are not visible from public view, do not involve the removal of historic features, and do not detract from or overwhelm from the context of the historic districts. So option 2 is a more simplified design that detracts less from the surroundings, from the available options. The proposed project is still visible from public view, even though it will be set back 100 and 220 feet respectively. The material proposed is seen throughout the development in the existing arched entrance off of 2nd Avenue, the balconies, and fencing seen on the site. Metal is also used throughout the downtown district, most commonly for fences. This type of element is not common in the downtown area, so the use of this material for an arbor top is not seen in the district. The signage proposed is not an approved sign type that is seen in the zoning ordinance. And so we would like to focus on the proposed arch inlay designs, appropriateness of the proposed design in the context of the historic district, and whether this detracts from or overwhelms in the context, and the use of the material for this item and visibility of the proposed item. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's begin some discussion here. Bob, you have any thoughts on this particular
Well,
idea?
I don't remember. Have you moved the locations?
No,
Same.
to clarify, relative to location and height, those columns are in place. So there's really,
Okay.
without quite a bit of, yeah,
Didn't remember.
we're kind of set on height as far as those columns themselves and obviously the location.
Bob, is your button hit there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
But as far as design, I really like option one.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
You ready? You want me to skip over you?
No, I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
I actually prefer option 2.
Okay. Mr. Laster?
And I know we had a lengthy discussion about this at the last meeting. And I heard a lot of feedback from the board. Some of those members aren't here today about what was previously approved. For me, because of its setbacks of 100 feet and then 200 feet, 20 feet, I mean, I think I voted for the previous design. Of these, as far as options go, can you tell me kind of the theme? So what was the thought behind option one and option two?
Yeah. So overall, what we wanted to do, again, the phrase we kind of kept coming back to during that previous discussion was softening it. I think it felt a little, I don't know if severe is the right word, but we'll use it. So from a detailing standpoint, we extended the arms. We got rid of that straight piece on the bottom, the curve, the overall curve on both sides, softened that a little bit, thickened the members, articulated the detailing a little bit differently in both of those options, but did that again, just trying to do some things to soften that overall feel so it didn't feel, it just, again, I think what I heard before is what was presented was maybe a little too severe to sit comfortably within the downtown and as an element in those areas. So that was the idea with what we revised.
Okay. And really, either option would work for me.
Okay. Holly?
I think they're both softer and a lot better than the first one, so I think they're both good, but I prefer option 2 as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I kind of struggle with this one because, I think the kind of traditional wood arbor is probably more appropriate for the downtown district. And I think some of the previous versions and the things that were communicated was it's kind of, one, hard to do signage, and there's a maintenance thing with the wood. So I'm sympathetic to that. I didn't hear anything about the signage component of this, which is a difficult one because we don't even have anything really in the guidelines that describes something like this. Which doesn't mean we can't do it. Are there any zoning rules on that particular sign?
There's not an approved sign type that would fit what is proposed, so this wouldn't be supported by the zoning ordinance. However, if there was any type of guideline that would recommend this type of sign type, the guidelines can supersede the zoning ordinances in some cases.
Yeah, but we don't have guidelines on that either.
Not on the specific sign.
So I'm not so zoning doesn't allow it. We don't have guidelines to trump zoning. So it's hard for us to even probably consider that. And I guess we can look more into that, but we'll have to tackle that
Yeah.
emblem at some point.
Yeah, and I think as part of the last discussion, we actually previously had a sign. I really wanted to kind of decouple that and be able to, from a design standpoint, understand what would be acceptable. And then to your point, the signage is a little more complicated discussion. I guess I would ask this, to further describe this, it's really the Harpeth logo and using that, the way you would on a stone inlay or something like that on a building. I guess without asking a question that sounds silly and nitpicky,
When does it become a sign?
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but when I look at something like that and it's got an obvious kind of font and a text to it, it's like, well, it's a sign. You know, I've been in, say, the Skirmerhorn, the Symphony Center has some emblems in a lot of their railings and things, but they're abstract enough. It just looks like a floral motif, but it has initials and all
Yeah.
kinds of things in it. So I think, you know, somewhere's the line where it's abstracted enough that it maybe represents something to you all in terms of a wayfinding or a place marker, but maybe doesn't represent something to us as a sign. But I don't know what that line is or that it's delineated anywhere. The signage we may have to revisit sometime. And in these particular schemes, obviously it's pretty integral to the arch because
Yep.
if it weren't there,
You'd have a hole.
what's in that hole?
Yeah.
So there's that. I still kind of hearken back to the kind of pergola idea. I think it looks more like something you'd see in a traditional downtown area. Now, I agree that maybe it could be made out of metal, like the members be metal, so it could be painted, and maintenance-wise, you just don't worry about it ever again. I could see where wood is an issue, but that form and shape seemed more appropriate to me at the time, and I think that's why it got approved that way. And that's not to say the board wouldn't approve something like that. I'm saying that I would be more in favor of the older version, but maybe out of metal. So that's kind of where I stand on. Anybody else have any? Go ahead. Holly.
I think, Brandon, part of the reason you guys designed it like this is because there's that other arch, right, that looks very similar. I think like on, where is that one exactly?
It's on Second Avenue. There's an image, top
Yep.
left
Yeah.
of that last page.
Yeah, I think, to Tyler's point, I think typically I would think something that was a wood look that was like more of historic would be better. But in this case, I think because there's already the precedent for the other one there, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a nice looking one. But I mean, I understand that,
Yeah.
you know, if that didn't exist, then you could do wood. But to me, it seems like this would be not a problem because there's already something
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I wrestle with the fact I wasn't on the board when that was approved, but I don't think that meets the guidelines today either. So I'm like, well, I'm not a fan of doubling down on something that doesn't meet the guidelines just because we have one. So
And I'll specifically
I don't
say
think
we
these are
stayed away from-
unattractive. I just think, you know, for where it's at, it's a peculiar form. It's something just not seen. And when it's that out of the ordinary, it's usually a kind of an indication to me like, oh, well, the reason it's not something we see all the time in a downtown district like this, a historic district. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Do you have something else? Got your hand on the trigger.
So if you didn't have the sign, would you want to make the change to this metal arch? Or
Like
just
if,
leave
if
it
you
as
had
a-
to pull that medallion piece out of the middle.
Yeah. Do you
Yes. Yeah, the owner has indicated they like the idea of doing something of this, right? This is kind of what they've talked about. They had talked about it previously, so they like the idea of that. So, well, not to get into a process discussion because that's something we'll talk through with staff. But I think if it came down to it, if we had to pull that and make some provisions to add it back later, once that got approved and whatever that process is, we can do that. But I think there'd be a way. I think we'd want to do something that would still be that shape. I don't think their desire to do that shape is entirely dependent upon the medallion in the middle.
Just to iterate, is that you have the sure thing that's already been approved, the pergola look, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the board, at least from the actual meeting, that that's what seems to been more desired. So I mean, that's all I can. All I'm saying on that might be the more sure thing to do. What was originally approved. Although these are very nice designs, both of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? think that's it. Is that,
Can,
you have a question? Go ahead.
I do, trying to figure out how to phrase it. In the interest of having something, you know, in the interest of having clarity to take back to my owner, would it be fair to say, like, this is acceptable if we come back? You know, obviously, this is non-binding, understand all that, but, I mean, is this something that would be acceptable if we came back in a meeting?
Well, we have to be careful about us polling everybody to see which way they'd vote next time. You know what I mean?
Understand.
That's something you kind of have to gauge based on our feedback. I think Brian summarized it pretty well in that I think we do. I mean, I would say we have a mixed bag of thoughts here. And you did have a sure thing with the wood version, but that may not be what you want. So if the owner decides they want to pursue this further, then it can be brought to a voting meeting.
Okay.
And the signage could be brought to a voting meeting. We would tell you that we'd probably like to see more about that and have more discussions about it. But that's really working with staff closer on the signage piece. And, you know, but that's kind of the best we can offer you. We can't
That's fair.
indicate how we might
No,
vote.
absolutely, and that.
Our legal guys over there going,
Yeah,
yes, we
yeah.
can.
I'm waiting for Blake to jump in. No, we're good. No, I appreciate that. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I heard both people like the one on the right. Some like one on the left. They're very similar. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're welcome to bring it back if you like.
I shall.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Did the representatives from 125 South Margin, are they here now? Okay. If you'll come on up, that was number 1 here, and we just jumped to 2, and we'll come back to 1 if that's all right. Are you Mr. Vorak?
Yes.
Okay. If you'll give us just a brief intro to your project, and then we'll hear from staff and then have a discussion.
Yeah, my name's Greg Dvorak with Knoll Creek Builders. I represent Lisa Biggers, the owners of the store. Lisa would like to fix this front porch, and it's actually what I would consider very, very minor restoration, but it still requires you guys to approve it. So Elizabeth and Emily came out and visited with us, so they got to see it firsthand. Is there a way you can blow that picture up? I don't know. I think that's good enough.
These
Let me
projectors,
just-
the projectors reproduce black really well.
So, what you got going on is, this is the basic porch right here. This is a ramp. However, in the past, we believe it went straight across. It was turned into a ramp at some point. So there are indications that the porch came all the way out to here. So what Lisa would like to do is she would like to do away with the ramp, but extend this part of the porch all the way to the end. Not the roof,
Would you,
just the deck.
could you come and speak in the microphone? We have a laser
Oh,
pointer
that
that you
works.
could use. Just
Thank
so
you.
our audience at home can
Oh,
hear
okay.
you.
Hear you.
Sorry
Yeah,
about
thank
that.
you.
You're
I
good.
didn't know everybody was at home, but okay. Thank you.
They're probably not. My mom and her mom are the only ones that watch.
And my mom
Yeah,
in Florida.
go ahead.
All right, let me see if I can figure out how do you turn, which button turns this on?
It's the red one.
Okay. Yeah, these funny looking lines. The orange is representative of how Lisa would like us to reinstate the deck how it was. So what we would do is we would go out this distance, bury the ramp basically, and then on this side of the building, do the exact same thing. So it would be symmetrical. She does not want to do anything with this tin roof. We have to do some repairs, but not any renovation. The deck itself is approximately 14 inches tall. So Lisa asked that we put in a step. There's a step here right now, and she wants the step to go all the way around. That's what that green line is trying to represent. So basically, flatten it out symmetrically, left and right, and then while we're doing it, she wanted us to come back with a composite deck as opposed to a wood deck. So I was asked to bring samples of what that might look like. She has not selected her color, but this is she would probably select one of these gray colors because her building is black, and she has no intention of changing that color. So that's really the request is, we're seeking approval to go symmetrically out with the flat deck, and then put a step all the way around it in a U-shaped fashion.
And that the extensions will remain uncovered.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing, no changes to the roof.
Okay, just making sure that I'm clear.
And then there won't be any need for a railing since there'll be a step. She already has 2 ramps going into the building, so there's no handicap issue. It's already there.
All right.
So basically what she wants to do is clean up this deck, make it look pretty, and then she can put some furniture out there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Staff, this is Elizabeth
Yes.
again. Thank you.
Thank you. So as mentioned, 125 South Margin Street is a historic commercial building. The building features a false front and board and batten exterior. The listing in the National Register does note the partial width porch and wood floor and metal shed roof in the listing. The porch maintains these elements today in addition to a ramp that extends to the right of the porch. The wood materials have deteriorated, and the applicant is here today to discuss replacing materials and expanding the porch and step to the porch. Historic imagery of the building has not been submitted or found at this time to show a detailed image of what the porch may have looked like historically and whether this alteration would be supported by historic images. And the guidelines would recommend to preserve and maintain the location and configuration of original balconies, porches, and decks, preserve original elements and materials such as columns, flooring, railing, and decorative trim, maintain and repair deteriorated elements as needed, with materials that match original materials, and where replacement is required, replace in a fashion that preserves the key character defining features of the historic buildings. As for materials, as needed, regular maintenance is preferred. Should historic exterior wood require repair or replacement, the resulting materials, profiles, and design should match the historic configuration. For large areas of decay, remove only the damaged section and replace it with matching materials, and preserve and maintain historic wood materials. So the replacement of the materials with a composite material would not be supported by the guidelines, as they would recommend replacing materials with matching materials such as wood. The expansion of the porch would alter this configuration, as it would expand the footprint and no longer all be under the shed roof. This alteration is on a highly visible front. If proposed elsewhere on other facades, this alteration may be more appropriate, as there's more flexibility with guidelines on other facades, or if there was historic imagery supporting the expanded footprint of the porch. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to start on your end this time. You ready, Holly?
Yeah, well, I would support extending the porch because to me, it seems like it's not actually going to really change the look of the facade. It would just make it more functional as a building for people to use. I understand the guidelines about the different material for the composite. I feel like if it looks like wood, that would be a reasonable exchange. And I would love to hear other people's feedback because
I think it'd be that one.
to me, it seems like it would be one of those almost invisible improvements that wouldn't be causing a real conflict, even though it may not have been that wide of a porch in the first place. So I'd love to hear what
Okay.
your
Okay.
and this is meant to look like wood, so it seems like for something like a floor where you're not staring at it and it's not like the building is clad with something that's not authentic wood. It seems like it wouldn't make a huge difference as far as how it looks. That's
Okay.
my thoughts.
Perfect. Brian?
Well, I too look for historic images of the building, and I didn't find any. I do know that it was a feed and seed store at one time. And then I believe it may have been Farnsworth Hardware store at one time too. And all those reasons are good reasons to have a ramp. I tend really to support the guidelines on this and staff's comments that the porch shouldn't be extended in this type manner that changes it in this way. and that the material that goes back for the decking should be wood, a real wood product.
Is pressure treated wood acceptable?
Staff, is pressure treated wood?
I believe so if it's not a composite material and is wood.
Yeah, I've seen like, handicap ramps that have been installed while I've been on the board. They were put in with pressure treated wood.
Okay. Thank you.
Madeline?
What's their goal in extending the porch out?
They want to create a space for customers to relax and sit, enjoy the furniture.
I mean, I also tend to agree with staff. Can I see that?
Sorry.
And it being real wood, but I do think, as far as what I can see in the picture, this color's good, but it being real wood. And then I also wanted to know, would the risers of the stairs go back to black?
Yes.
Would they be black again?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madeline. Bob?
I was curious, I mean, I didn't go out and measure it, but is it not symmetrical, the building? I mean, are the windows is everything kind of wonky? Or is this just because the photograph was kind of made at an
No,
angle?
the front is symmetrical. The front door is in the center. So right now, the way the porch is not symmetrical.
Yeah, I would agree with not having a composite wood, having a pressure treated wood, and I mean, it's not what y'all are looking for, but if you're not using the ramp, maybe evening out that edge of the ramp and taking the rest of the ramp off, just to give it a little more symmetricality. So, but I think the other would personally look kind of strange, adding that extra step around it. And I mean, I can understand that you'd want that like as a gathering place,
Correct.
but I couldn't support that.
Okay. Do you have something else, Madeline? Go ahead.
It looks like in that first picture that if the ramp were gone, you could extend it down to the end of that window and still be under the shed roof. And I can't really tell on the other side. Personally, I don't mind if the stairs go around, like extend all the way to the end, but not past the shed roof.
Okay.
So, but we would have to, if we don't put something at the two ends, the short end of the porch, there's danger. So then we have to talk about railings.
Railing, yeah.
And there's never been railings there. So that would present a whole different issue.
Okay.
So the purpose of the step was for safety.
Well, I'm not sure about the railing requirement. I think that comes in at 30 inches. Our codes guys over there, 30 inches. So 14, you don't have to have any fall protection.
But we could not have a no step.
You can have no step. It could just be 14-inch fall off, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that came from him, not me. Yeah, this is kind of like a pulling the thread out of the sweater thing for me. I see the floor material needs changing out. Is what I'm hearing. It looks like the ramp, I can sort of tell, looks like it's 2x6s or something. Is the floor of the main portion of that porch like a old tongue and groove, or is it like
It's 2x6s.
it's 2x6s as well?
My sense is it's been replaced at some point
Okay, yeah.
in time.
Well, I don't feel good about the composite material. I think everybody's in consensus there, and the guidelines don't support it.
Okay.
And because of that, I don't think it's in the best interest of the historic district or the building to put real wood out beyond. I mean, pressure treated might do okay, but I just don't think the extension makes sense in that regard. If the ramp came off, I think you could make a pretty good argument that the ramp was added at some point because you have other ramps the accessibility thing is satisfied somewhere else, then great. I wrote down that I'd really love to see when you all come back to get a certificate of appropriateness for all this restoration work. If there were just some closer up pictures of some of the conditions. I know there were some, like a column, bottom of a column, that looked like it was toast. So more of that kind of thing. If there is evidence of whatever, any claims of evidence, bring the evidence. We want to see it. And you know, to Madeline's point, to extend the porch to the edge of the overhang, I mean, I guess that's okay, but there would have always been an overhang too. So I don't want you to gobble up the overhang and then we maybe have to extend the roof to protect it. Does that make sense? I think the guidelines would suggest leaving the porch, replacing things in kind, materials just as they were, and just bringing it back to a safer, better, more sustainable state. I'm not sure I got a great indication from everybody on the ramp if the ramp came or went. Again, I'd like to maybe see some more pictures of how it's related to the rest of the porch. If it's obviously added on and all modern, that's one thing. If it's been there a long time, the guidelines would recommend it stay as well. I think that's true.
How would we prove or disprove that?
Well, that's the hard part. And we have to default to, well, if you can't prove it's new, then it has to stay per the guidelines.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Some people can produce old pictures from 1986 or something, and it wasn't there. And you go, well, it was added after that.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen any of that evidence yet. Did you find any old pictures of the building?
I
No?
did not,
Okay.
and I looked.
Yeah.
But just so you know, if you're just replacing in kind, that can be an administrative approval rather than coming back for the board.
Yeah, so if we repair the boards as is, like they are, then it's an administrative thing.
Yeah.
Okay. But what about the step across the front? Right now, the step is only between the two benches. So where those benches are, there are no steps. Would it be okay to put the bench or the step all the way across the front? Or do you still want?
I think that's another one of those building and site and setting changes that would probably have to come back and see us. And again, it's the guidelines discourage from changing anything really on the front. I see the utility in it, but there's also in sort of a built-in innate approach to the building, you have to come to the middle to go in. It was designed and built that way to come to the middle to come in. So it's part of the experiential quality that is being preserved in our guidelines too. That's what we call site and setting.
Okay.
And this is kind of where the site and setting and the building meet. So it's kind of picked up in both pieces of the guidelines.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in summary, going back with wood is understood. Now it's about the ramp, I guess.
And what I'd say too about the ramp, and codes may have to chime in here, there's different rules for rails on ramps. The 30-inch thing maybe doesn't apply. Sometimes it's a steepness thing that triggers it. Is that correct? Yeah. He knows more about it than I ever will, but that's, yeah.
There's three public entrances.
And those two are accessible.
Two are ramps, yeah, two are ramps.
And this is one of the two ramps? No,
No.
it's the other two. So all of them have ramps. Okay. Yeah. So you might go have a conversation with them just to make sure that, because some things are probably have been that way a long time and are grandfathered in, and they may be able to help you understand what changing things might trigger or might not. But I'd have a conversation with them, and then obviously staff can help you with the historic type things. So is that helpful?
Yeah, so we'll investigate the ramp, see what we can uncover or not uncover,
Yeah.
and go from there.
Okay.
But if we discover that the ramp is going to stay, and we say, okay, we're gonna reskin the deck with new wood, that's just an administrative approval?
If
Or-
it's all wood now, is it
Or
in
is it,
kind?
you know what, we're not changing anything, we're basically repairing. So if we go into repair mode,
They're thinking.
So, in the past, because it is on a highly visible front facade, in-kind repairs and replacement have come to the commission
Okay.
because it is on the front. So it would come to the commission for in-kind repair and replacement on the front.
Okay, so we would review it, but the good thing is it sounds like that proposal would be in line with the guidelines, which means they would most likely support it, which means we would most likely support if it goes with the guidelines.
so we would go through another round of, I would submit the proposed changes to you, and then you guys would do what you need to do.
Yes, we can follow up. So the next meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission is February 10th with an application deadline of this Friday, January 24th. And we'll follow up with next steps on to apply for that.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not here. Don't show up here.
It will be at Eastern Flank Events
Very
Facility.
difficult to show up here because the doors are locked.
I know, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Okay, to item number 3 here, discussion of site alterations to the driveway at 1343 Huffines Ridge Drive, known as the Carruthers House. And Greg Gamble, I see one of his comrades coming. Please introduce yourself, even though we know you.
Okay. I don't think I need much. Oh, yeah, great. Perfect. Hi, Jeff Rosiak, Gamble Design Collaborative. We've been working with both our client and the Parks Department and the Engineering Department to solve access to the front of the Carruthers House. We had a DRC visit summer last year, spring last year, something like that. And we have since then been collecting some as-built information to understand slopes in front of the home, between the home and Huffines. The previously approved plan shows a series of switchbacks that access the house from on-street parking along Easel Drive. You can see that on the left. And what we proposed and showed at the DRC was a drive that comes up toward the front of the house, but hugs the tree line and turns to the north to kind of keep from impacting visually in front of the house itself. We had some slope issues, though, with where the water line was installed by Millcrofton. And so what we found is that by extending the driveway a bit further to the north, to the adjacent property to the north, which is also a dedicated park, but from the Orium development, we can solve that slope issue. And so, again, coordinating with Parks and Engineering Department, we think we have a solution that everyone is supportive of and on board with, and wanted to come back to the DRC and present this change to you. I think it would come in as a site plan amendment through the city process. But yes.
So, staff, this is, if this comes back to us, since it's a site plan amendment, would we be doing a COA or a recommendation or both? Or COA? Okay.
Yeah, it'd be a
Just-
COA.
I heard that site plan amendment. And I thought, is this a different thing than we normally see? Okay.
So the site plan amendment, that'll be with our current planning
Okay.
department.
Very
division.
good. All right, Emily has some other staff comments for us.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the property at 1343 is known, at 1343 Huffines Ridge Drive is known as the Carruthers House, and the property is within the Historic Preservation Overlay and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The change of location of the driveway is proposed. The previous design was complicated and snaked through the site. The current proposal includes a driveway that will come in from Huffron's Ridge Drive and then come to the left side of the property. Early in 2024, a site visit was held at the property to discuss the feasibility of changing the layout of parking and allowing for a turnaround. Parking was supported by the DRC to the side of the building, as the design guidelines recommends locating parking and driveways along the rear or side of buildings. The proposal mostly meets the intent of the guidelines. The material sample of the proposed chip-sealed road will need to be provided. In previous meetings, the materials and the style of the driveway and parking at the park at Harlansdale Farm was discussed to be utilized on this site. And I believe that they utilized the color of Yosemite sand for the property. And so that was just one of the textures and colors that had been discussed. And there were a couple comments made from our colleagues in our engineering department and building and neighborhood services. The first one is that the engineering department has not reviewed or approved the proposed driveway design, and any driveway for non-residential public use should meet the zoning ordinance development standards, including the minimum width, maximum slope, and surface material. The documentation as to how the parking requirement has been determined will be required at permitting. And if fire access is required to the site, the proposed plan will likely not meet requirements due to the slope. And staff recommends reaching out to the fire department to confirm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go in to out. Mr. Bryan, you're up. If you have some comments, please.
So just a question on the chip sealed drive. Is that the same thing that, of the drive that leads up to Carnton's Fleming Center?
Yeah, I believe that's correct. And Harlansdale, I think, has similar chip and seal, yeah.
Okay, so that's very common in our park areas. You know, the site and settings has already been quite altered through Isle Drive and what they've done on the development. And I think bringing that drive in the way you propose and still giving a lot of green space around the existing historic structure, I think it's a good solution from what I see.
Okay. Madeline.
I agree. I think it makes a lot more sense than the left side.
Okay.
Same
Bob?
with me, and I really like, we went out there, looked at how this was going to play out, and I like how the parking is kind of sheltered by part of the trees.
Yeah, and I would just add, on that image on the right, you can see kind of just the outline of a few trees. Those were located in the field, and so we've kind of really finessed the location of the drive to come in between some existing trees and really keep it hidden kind of back behind the trees.
Okay. Holly? Happy? Okay. I think this proposal's much better than the last version we saw that sort of had parking in the front of the house at that point. My only kind of critique here might be where you're coming up the hill and you come in off of Huffines there, you've got that first curve, and then when you hit the second curve there, this may seem silly, but I think it will make a difference. If that could be a wider radius and hug those trees just a little tighter there, that it won't feel like it's pulling in front of the house as much, and it'll allow cars to kind of pass each other a little easier. What I wouldn't want to happen is people like pause in front of the house, passing each other and all that. I think that might soften things, but I'm no road designer. I'm just thinking if I'm leaving, somebody's coming in, and we hit that curve at the same time, we're both going to stop. Somebody's going to go first, and it just impacts the way people see it. Because, I think this is the one historic structure in town you can see on I-65. So keeping cars from kind of stopping right there. And what might happen, whether we like it or not, is people might park along that street. And if they're going to do that, I'd much rather it be closer to the trees than in front of the house, if that makes sense. But other than that, I like this. I like it tucked away. All that looks better. Makes more sense than the switchbacks, I think. Anything else? Anybody? Good. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Okay, item number 4. Discussion of alterations at 1309 Adams Street, and staff has our presentation first on this one, and that's Elizabeth.
So thank you, and we'd like to thank the applicant for returning to Design Review Committee with alterations to the building located at 1309 Adams Street. And we'd like to thank the applicant and owner for working on the property to restore and rehabilitate the building. 1309 Adams Street is listed as a contributing building in the National Register listing for the Adams Street National Register Historic District, and it is a circa 1900 frame building. The items within the application have been completed, so the applicant is here to begin the process to retroactively receive a COA for the alterations completed. Items such as pressure washing, painting of the previously painted shutters, in-kind roofing replacement would not require COA and are greatly appreciated as regular maintenance and preservation of the building. However, the following items do require review and approval for a COA: the door replacement, installation of a gutter, and in-kind repair and replacement of deteriorated trim and siding elements depending on the amount replaced. So the door that was replaced was a solid wood door that the applicant has noted as being non-historic, and the replacement door is a full light door with a built-in blind function. I believe I have an image of that as well. So while the door selection is somewhat appropriate, the built-in blind is a contemporary design that is not appropriate, especially on a highly visible front. A more appropriate door selection would be a full light door without the built-in blind functionality or a full wood door. Internal treatment, when they are not a part of the door, such as a blind or curtain, applied to the door on the interior of the building does not require review. The applicant has submitted images of what appears to be a blind on a neighboring property on their door. From what can be seen, it appears to be an internal treatment and is not applied between the glass, which would not be reviewed. So the next item is the installation of a gutter. A gutter is appropriate to assist in preserving buildings. The selected style does appear to be an OG style gutter, and the guidelines would recommend a style of gutter that is appropriate to the age of the home. Dating to about the 1900s, the appropriate gutter style would have been a half-round gutter. The in-kind repair and replacement of trim, siding, and other materials that were submitted in the application appear to be at a smaller scale and are appropriate. So we would greatly appreciate feedback on the items to guide the property owner to a COA. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And if you'll introduce yourself and give us a little overview of, or any comments you want to make.
Hi, I'm Monica Underwood, and I'm here representing the homeowner Rachel Felix. She works in the domestic abuse arena, and they're very, very busy this time of year. So she's in New Jersey, but she's a Franklinite, native Franklin, and moved to New Jersey and inherited this property, which was condemned. It was in really, really bad shape. So there hasn't been a whole lot done to the outside other than mostly pressure washing the vinyl siding, which appears that it's not historic anyway. It looks like it was probably put in the 1980s. And because there were no gutters or downspouts on the property.
Monica, do you mind pulling that mic closer to you?
Sure, okay. I'm getting over having the flu, so I'm not 100% myself anyway, but, where was I?
Gutters and downspouts.
Yes, there were no gutters or downspouts on the property at all, and so there was a lot of deterioration and termite infestation, which was really, really, really bad. So, the homeowner had limited funds, and her object was just to try to repair but not replace. And so anything that could be repaired, like any kind of trim, was simply caulked, and whatever was there that could be used was used. And so so there wasn't a whole lot of replacing, but I think there were 2 gutters and downspouts at the most on the property. I have photos. I didn't think to even upload those, but and they're very similar to the downspouts that were put in now. And so we looked in some of the other homes, neighboring homes across the street, and it looked like the same size of gutters and downspouts. And we chose the black because it kind of made the house pop a little bit more. And the house that's directly across and to the left also has the same color downspouts. And all of the others look like they're the exact same size that were put on this one.
Okay. Anything else before we have a little discussion?
I don't,
We may ask you some more questions
Yeah,
as we
please
get
do.
going here.
for sure.
Okay. So we've got, I wrote down the door, replacement, gutters, and then there's been a little bit of trim and siding work, just some of those patches we see in the pictures. Is that the 4 things? Okay. So let's talk about those things. Madeline gets to start this time.
Get to start?
Yeah.
I agree with staff's comments about the gutters. I think the half round and maybe a white would have been more appropriate for this house. As far as the blinds, I agree with staff comments.
Yeah. Okay. Bob?
I agree with what staff has said. You were wanting to use like a door that has a glass in the top half?
So the door that was chosen kind of mimics some of the historic doors, but we didn't realize that you couldn't have see, that's across the street, they've got the
Right.
blinds. But these can also be maneuvered to where you don't even have the blinds there. They were just kind of, that door was chosen for privacy because homeless people were inhabiting the home, and
Right.
people are always looky-loos, builders, developers.
I think what you're seeing on the screen right now would be an appropriate door with the glass, of course. Shutters wouldn't, I mean, the little shutters wouldn't be in between the glass. It would, if they wanted to utilize it on the inside, that's their preference. I have the same type of door in my house, and we just have fabric, sheared fabric over that because we get so much sunlight. But y'all are facing differently.
And the house is vacant too, it's empty, there are no curtains or
But is this planning to be renovated?
sold. She
Okay.
fixed it up enough just to hopefully sell it. And the Battle of Franklin is, or one of the trusts is looking at it right now because they own the adjacent property behind it. And I don't know if they'll pull the trigger, but it would be contiguous for them and maybe make it something that the public could use.
But I would still utilize whatever you're requesting be equal to if it was going to eventually be inhabited. You
Sure.
want that look for the neighborhood, and I think the board would be more open to something that fell into it would have to fall under our guidelines, so.
The door looks very much like that, other than the blinds that you can control from the inside, the button. So it could be just constantly left up, and then it looks more historic.
Right,
So
but it's a
with-
full glass.
Yeah, it's similar to that. And also the photos that are showing up in here, the colors rather, see, that's where it's kind of halfway down. So if the button were pushed, you wouldn't even see the blinds at all.
Right,
So it's just there
I
right
couldn't
now
support
to
that.
keep people from looking inside and breaking in again
Right.
and living in there, because the house isn't really monitored.
Right, but I couldn't support that type of door, personally.
But if you look around the neighborhood, a lot of them look very much like that. Some people are doing a great job with putting up historic doors, but a lot are not. And again, with the homeowner and her limited means, it was like, you know, she had to get a temporary door from Home Depot, something.
Right, but we
Yeah.
still have to fall under
Sure.
City of Franklin's guidelines.
Yeah, and I think
Understand that.
what staff was saying is not necessarily that the full glass was an issue. It's that that type of door with the blinds in it is not. I mean, they make windows that way too, and they're not recommended in our guidelines. Whether you keep them up or down, that's not something we can just take people's promises on. You know what I mean?
How about just taking the door out and patching up the one that was up there before and painting it and putting it back?
Yeah, I mean the original wood door. That would be the number one choice for the design guidelines is that
Not
it be repaired.
historic. Is that okay?
Well, it's a real wood door, and it's a paneled door, and it is reminiscent of something that would have been on a house of that vintage. And we do see houses of this vintage that have a full glass door, like what you all put on there. They just don't have the blinds in there.
Yeah.
So that's really the issue that I heard with the staff comments. I didn't want to forget you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I think the original, even though it's not original, I think it would be a big improvement on this one, because even if a glass door is acceptable, if it's an actual old one, it looks different than this one. So I think even if you somehow like hid the blinds in this one, it still would look like a new, like not very nice door. So I think that going back to the original one, even if it's not original, would be better for sure.
Yeah, the old door I think was from the 1990s. It
Can you
looked
go to the
like.
picture of the old door from outside again? Or the new door, the replacement door.
That's the old door right
Yeah.
there that you just hand over. That's what it looked
Yeah,
like.
yeah. Go to that new door. So,
And again, it's just pulled down halfway.
right, I know how they work. I have two of these on the back of my house, French
Oh,
doors.
okay.
So I know exactly. And I think what Holly was getting to is this type of door is made a little differently too. It's got the glass stopped in. It has kind of applied trim on the outside to hold the glass in, whereas a historic door would be like almost rabbited in. It has a channel that the glass sits in, and there's no like applique of trim on the top to hold the glass in. Not always. We can find examples of both, but generally speaking, the older full glass doors have a different sticking profile than the newer ones from Home Depot.
Yeah.
So there's a little issue with the door. The gutters, yes, they probably would have had half round gutters and not that OG style, which is called K. That's the shape, K shape. I don't know why they call it K. It's not the shape of a K. I've seen K gutters on houses, old houses too, but they've probably been replaced over time. So I'm sure we could drive around Franklin and find Ks on houses this old and older and younger. It's the most common gutter shape. So I don't have a strong feeling on that. Do we even review color of gutters? It's inherent in the material, so we do.
And I did drive by today and I took a picture of the house across the street. The one that y'all have has the white gutter.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one I took today is right next to that one, and it's got the black gutters
Sure.
and downspouts that look identical to what this one has,
What you put on there.
1309.
Yeah. Like I said, we can drive around town and find examples of that gutter, certainly. So I don't have a real strong feeling about it. Some people really like that heavy contrast. It's a stylistic choice in some regards, and we don't comment too much on that. I agree. I would have liked white better, but it really doesn't matter what I like. I want to comment on the trim and siding.
I think it looks a little bit better in person than it does.
Yeah,
on these photographs aren't doing the colors justice on anything.
Yeah, we've got it here too, and it does look better here. The projectors aren't great at projecting. What I'd say, like they told you, the shutter painting, fine. Some of that rotten wood that was replaced kind of at the bottom of the door, the little plinth blocks, that has to be done on every house eventually. This kind of work, I think the issue I have with it is it's not that it is one that you have to come see us to do work like this, right? Or get some type of approval. And two, I think it's taken to a point where yes, the house is becoming more stabilized, which we all appreciate. It needed to just be propped up in place, if that makes sense. But at the same time, that's not an acceptable stopping point, I don't think. I mean, it's done, but not painted and mismatched materials. So there, at some point, I know there's got to be some kind of holistic approach to finish it all. It can't
Oh,
just be
that
left
one?
in that state.
That's already been painted.
Sure.
In all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good, but
For
it's
sure.
still, we've got some vinyl. We've got, it looked like some of it was wrapped in aluminum. We've got some wood. There's just a
That's the
mixed
hou-
bag.
That's the house. Whoever had owned it prior to when Rachel acquired it, it's a mishmash of everything, and
Yeah.
I'm surprised it wasn't condemned. When I first went in there and her aunt had it listed for sale, and then she wanted me to list it, I said, it's gonna have to go off the market until it's fixed up enough to where
Yeah.
people can safely
Safe,
walk
yeah.
through it. 2 of the guys had to be hospitalized. It was so dirty and nasty. One got a bad rash, and then the other one had something in his lungs. But the house was very unsafe, and
Sure.
and I could see why it was condemned.
Yeah.
But again, the whole house is a mishmash, and she tried to not do that. She tried to just, you can see kind of if there was
Yeah.
any replacement in like kind. She did the best she could
Sure.
with what money she has.
Yeah. And I think replacing things that are rotten in kind like that, we would all, I think, agree that those are good things.
I couldn't even get Cook's Pest Control to go out and do the termite. The guy said, no way. He went out one time, and so I had to call the manager who said, okay, we'll send somebody in there to do it. The whole house is just eaten by termites.
Sure. Any other comments on doors, gutters, trim, siding? Nothing. I mean, we'd love to see this house brought back to a really nice finished state, which would mean vinyl siding gone and all the roofing issues fixed. We don't review the inside, but I'd love to just see somebody do something with the house.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Anything else, anybody? I think that's what we've got for you tonight. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you very much.
All right. Item number 5, discussion of alterations at 230 Franklin Road, Building 1 at the factory. This is factory round 1 for the evening. Ding, ding.
Be here for a little while.
This is not David Click, but they'll introduce themselves.
Yeah, David Click is a colleague of mine with Holiday. So Benton Smothers and
Meet you.
David Click, both
Awesome.
Holiday. So David is an architect on our team. This, just an intro, this is Building 1. This was the old Mafioso's building. So we're finally getting around to it. So Mafioso's left last year, and we have a tenant that we're working with on this. And so now what we've identified here is some work that we would do as the landlord is our obligation under the proposed lease that we're working on. So a lot of it's deferred maintenance, but anyway, that's it. I'll let David take it from here.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, let me start with kind of looking at this as a big picture scope of work. Really what we're proposing is the removal of several non-historic components on the exterior of the building. I had submitted last year for the removal of what's labeled as number 1, the awning that comes off perpendicular to the front entrance, and that's already been approved. What we want to do now is just remove the remainder of those green awnings, which, as you all know, they really cover up and mask the visibility of that front facade. They're non-historic. And then beyond that, we have various bits of HVAC equipment, grease hoods. If you remember when Mafioso was there, big kind of intense kitchen use. We don't need any of that equipment, so we like to peel all that off of the exterior. And you can see there's a lot that's kind of sandwiched in between building 1 and building 2. So everything from this kind of front corner toward that rear, there's a lot of equipment. There's a walk-in cooler. All of that would be removed as well. And then we would also like to do some work up here at the mechanical screen. Now you'll see there is an existing screen up there now, made of wood, that's in a state of disrepair. What we're proposing is to replace that with a corrugated black metal mechanical screen. Same material, same color that we've been implementing throughout the factory campus. We have this same mechanical screen on about 3 or 4 different buildings. We also have it, if I can go back one more, you can see we also have it directly adjacent for the vertical circulation core building 2, as well as the mechanical screen at building 2. So we've got this same material directly adjacent to where we're proposing here for building 1. And as you can see, there's a magnolia tree on that southern facade. So sight lines are kind of obstructed already. So, this whole mechanical zone would be very well masked and block any sight lines from the right of way. Excuse me. Go to the next one. Here on the rear of the building, you can see we've got additional screening underneath those metal stairs. There is additional kitchen equipment positioned behind that screen, which all that will be coming out as well. However, we are proposing to keep some level of screening at that location, but just shorten its footprint and keep it to where it's just directly underneath the stairs, using the same materials, same color as we've already established. And on that slide, you can kind of see the bulk of all of this kitchen equipment and HVAC, exhaust hoods, all that. That's a close-up view of that tight space between building 1 and building 2, where we're proposing all that equipment to be removed. Excuse me. This is a continuation of that same area. I think you can all see that this isn't exactly in the best condition. We have no use for it, so the proposal is just to remove all of this equipment entirely.
There will be some repairs to, you can see fascia board and siding, and the idea is that that's in-kind replacement.
Mm-hmm.
We're noting it in this package, but so the columns, they're in the front.
So that's another component to this scope is really the in-kind repair and replacement of various building envelope systems. We include a replacement of the standing seam roof. The windows, as you can see here, are in various states of needing attention. We've got some dry rot on columns, replacement of window panes. Again, this would all be in-kind work, sticking with the nature, the historic character of the building, but just really addressing the building envelope and all of its needs.
And probably the biggest item for you all to really review is the roof. This was there is a historic image at the beginning of the package, and it was shingle roof, and then you could see what Calvin Lehue did in the late 90s. The standing seam, we believe, matches the aesthetic around the site. It matches the industrial buildings, and we feel like it ties in nicely. So we want to replace it in kind, but obviously change the color. It was painted at some point to that red color that's flaking off. We just want to repair. Basically all of that red would be replaced with a standing seam roof in dark bronze. There would be, when the tenant comes along, they will probably have some improvements too. So I don't think this is kind of a first run of some of our cleanup work and some of the, the roof and the facade repairs. But I suspect you will see more.
Okay.
I think that's
Yeah, I think
You
that's,
think that's good?
that's it.
Okay. Let's hear from staff here. I think Emily's got some comments.
Yes, and while I was researching this, I found the National Register listing, and so this is from 97, and they did include a picture of the building 1 here, and it did have the shingles roofing on it. So just wanted to share that with everyone. So, so the building 1 on the factory campus is a circa 1950 brick gable roof office building with a small addition connected to its west-facing elevation. In 97, it was remodeled into office spaces, and it most recently was a restaurant space. The 1997 National Register listing determined this building as non-contributing. For the roof replacement, the existing roof consists of a copper color metal roof that has been painted red. The 1997 National Register listing photo shows that this building had a shingle roof, and so does the 1955 to 1960 photo within the application. The guidelines recommend preserving historic roof forms and materials. If partial or wholesale replacement is needed, use materials whose composition and appearance match the historic materials. The building would have traditionally utilized a shingle roof, and changing the color and material of the roof may draw attention to the roof material. As proposed, replacing the roof to a dark metal does not meet the guidelines. It is, however, suggested that providing maybe a rendering of with the shingle versus the metal may be helpful in understanding the proposal. For the vinyl canopy removal, so as David mentioned, portion of this that's labeled 1 was received a COA late last year. The canopy was added in 2015, and so its removal would be appropriate within the guidelines. For the removal of the HVAC and screening over here, that is appropriate to remove. The removal, installation, and new screening here that's on number 4, this is a good photo, would be appropriate. It does consist of the horizontal wood boards, and it is tucked behind the side of that building. Same thing over here. It is on the rear, and it is decreasing that footprint just a little. And thank you for providing what it would look like. It's very helpful.
Of course.
And then this was just another alternate angle of that walk-in cooler. For the repair of these elements, the guidelines do recommend repair over replacement. So like in this image, it does have like a broken pane of glass. The guidelines would support, just replacing this single pane, not to replace the whole window.
Right.
And that kind of sums up my comments. Thank you.
Okay. All right. A lot of pieces here. We've got the awnings, the roofing, the windows sound like repair rather than replace, and then screening is appropriate, what they propose. So, Bob, do you want to make any comments on any of that?
I just seeing this old photograph, I didn't realize how residential this building looked. It looks like a home. And I think once all these components in the front are taken off, it's going to reveal itself. But I mean, as far as the roof goes, I kind of like the shingles myself, just because I think it would kind of soften that whole building. But I don't have an issue with the dark roof either. And I'm glad you're getting rid of all these components on the left, cooler and all of that. So those are my comments.
Okay.
I think it looks, gonna look great.
I would say it would look a lot like the 1998 photo. That's the intent, kind of getting it back to that, that original, on the bottom right. And that would kind of match some of the standing seam roofs around the campus. So.
Madeline, your thoughts?
But the y'all are thinking about doing like a dark bronze or gray.
Yeah, we've got a sample too, if you'd like to see that. This was,
It's a dark bronze.
Yeah. We when we submitted this, we were suggesting black or a dark gray, or likely it was TBD. We've since gotten confirmation this is what the tenant would like, the dark bronze.
I don't know that I mind going back with metal, but I don't know if I know what I think on that yet.
It's fair.
But I'm glad y'all are cleaning up everything else. It'll look really good, a lot better.
Yeah, and the gutters would obviously be replaced along with
To match.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brian?
Awnings, yes, they need to go. No doubt about it. I remember before this was Mafioso's, it was the Boxwood Bistro, which was a good place to go eat. I hope whoever takes that over, whatever they do with it, anyway, that was a great place to eat. It's amazing to see how it's deteriorated in such a short amount of time. So that does go back to these maintenance issues. In the photographs that we're seeing, this building probably never had originally a metal roof. Originally, it probably had asphalt shingles. I know I've even repaired a porch where the contractor had signed his name when he did the porch. It was in 1925, and there were asphalt shingles behind the boards. So asphalt's been around for a long time, and I do think it would complement this building to go back with asphalt. But if you have to go with metal, I'm all right with the dark bronze. I do want to ask on that rear addition that's just kind of muddled to that building. When was that addition done? Was that in the 90s?
Yeah, that was Calvin Lehue. Yeah, so you can sort of see the new TPO roof is close to the break line. The original building is the kind of the dormer roof, and then that flat section is a new structure.
And would you do that in? What would you do that in? Are you replacing the roofing material in that addition?
No, there's no plans to replace that. That TPO is in good shape. It's kind of hidden from view. The back portion is really, I think that if the tenant's going to come back with some plans on that, that's the way we've left it. It's in their scope. We'll be kind of working with them to kind of guide them through this process with you all, but I expect that to come back through the tenant. I would fully anticipate the red going to a more neutral color.
Yeah, red and that copper penny they don't do that building any favors.
Right.
And actually that additional, the back doesn't do it any favors either. You ever thought about reworking all that into something better?
Absolutely we have. Yes, and we've kind of tossed around a lot of ideas, and we haven't landed on anything. I suspect that this group is gonna. We weren't sure. We didn't want to do anything without knowing who the user was. Now we have them. They're working on it, and I'm not sure exactly what they're going to come back with. We're going to review it with them. It's going through our owner review process before it even gets to you guys. So we have, aesthetic control over our building, but that's TBD.
Okay.
But I agree with you. I will put it that way, and I think that they do too. So something needs to happen to the back. But
Okay. All right.
I think one thing to also keep in mind with this building, what's unique to the factory is, albeit we have photos of asphalt shingles in the 50s, is really the context of this individual structure, which is, it's amongst other historical structures. So it's not just this one kind of standalone building. We've got, a dozen buildings out there that all kind of make up the the factory and kind of create its historic nature of the entire property. And everything out there has metal roof. It's either a flat roof and you can't see it. All the sloped roofs are all corrugated metal. The new structures that are going up out there have standing seam as well. So for this building here, it's part of a larger historical context that, putting a standing seam on this building would just be a continuation of kind of the overall look and the overall specifications and selections that we've made campus-wide. So I think that's worth pointing out as well, that it's amongst the campus as a whole.
You make an interesting point on that, but what I would also bring out is that this building was the office. So it's the white collar versus blue collar in the back. So, I mean, there is some precedent for making something different out of the building too.
Fair enough.
Okay. Holly?
Yeah, I think this building would look better with a historic roofing, like with the shingles instead of the metal, even though I get that it's cohesive to have everything be the same, but the building type is really, really different than the rest of it. So I would vote for the shingles.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with staff that the shingle roof is probably more appropriate. I really don't have strong feelings either way, except that that's what the guidelines literally say, is using what would have been the historic material. And then I hear what Brian's saying with the blue collar, white collar, but to me, a standing seam is kind of the white collar version of corrugated metal, right? Which is the blue collar version. So I could go with either thing there. But the thing that overarching to me is that I used this term earlier. It's kind of this experiential quality and kind of understanding things that happen at different eras without just there being a sign that this is older and this is newer and this is different than that. I think the architecture has to do that because, you maybe don't have Karis there to walk everybody through and tell them, right? So if this were a shingle roof, it sort of tells the story of this is just decidedly different than everything else because it was. But again, like aesthetically speaking, the metal roof, it's had a metal roof for 20 some odd years, 25 years.
Nearly 30 years now.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't bother me. I'd be thrilled if it were not that color or the mustard beneath it or whatever you want to call it. So I think I could be convinced that the metal, if the owners really felt like, and from a maintenance standpoint, it's probably better in that regard too.
Right.
The warranties are longer. I don't feel strongly either way, but because of that, I default to what staff and the guidelines just say. Does that make sense? That's what I'd say there. Well, everything else, I'm like, yes. Kind of looking behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz, I keep going, well, if they're removing all the kitchen equipment, it's not going to be a kitchen, but maybe that's just stupid thinking, but because all the kitchen stuff is just so ridiculously hard to put new stuff in, and hoods and all that's just so complicated. Anyways, that's an aside. It has nothing to do with anything. But everything else sounds like it's fairly appropriate. So
I hear all of that on the historic, being genuine to the historic nature of it. It's really just having a cohesive, kind of look around the site. It fits better to have the standing seam. Obviously, from a commercial perspective, we think it's more appropriate for the longevity. But,
in all honesty, the first time I went to the factory, I was like, that's just a different property up there. I didn't think it went with everything. I thought somebody else owned it.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of this is we want to try to, create that link. I mean, this is the front door, right? And so it's the standing seam roof does follow the look of the building behind, the main building, which is building 11. So, that's the idea. So, I don't know, it sounds like there's kind of a split decision. I'm not sure. It's kinda-
And there's not everybody's here too, so I don't
Right.
know how everyone would react. And maybe, so I guess you don't have to answer this, but are you going to the tenant come back and this work come back in one application, you think?
No, what we had aimed to do is to come back to, if this, provided this, we got good direction, good feedback, come back for the HCC in February. And so we would get a head start on some of our landlords' work while they're still working on design and.
So a separate thing.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got, for the way the lease is structured, we have our work, and then, we have a timeline to do it, and, we're getting a head start on it, is what we're doing.
Yeah, I just, the reason I asked was I'd be curious what some of the members who aren't here might have an opinion on it. And so I wasn't sure if maybe that could be revisited at a DRC that included some of the other things. But I would understand that, well, if we're going to take the roof off this thing, we're not going to spruce it up inside for them until the roof's probably done.
Right.
Yeah, like I said, I can't speak for everybody. There is a mixed bag, I think, but I don't have strong feelings either way. I just know what the guidelines say. And, if there were some hardship, we could talk about that. I don't necessarily see a hardship here, but I do see that there's existing metal on it, which is some sort of precedent to me. And because of that, I'm like, well, that's just in-kind replacement with a new color, in some regards. So I have mixed feelings on it, honestly.
Yeah, when we were putting this plan together, one idea was, well, if the roof is fine, maybe there's some repairs to make, and maybe it could be painted. You could have some type of specialty coating, but the idea was, well, if we're gonna go to that much trouble, and finding the right coating, and what's the warranty of that and the lifespan of that, really it makes sense to get an integral color with a new roof.
Yeah. Somebody tried to paint metal here in town, and the commission voted to not allow it because we just weren't sure when it would do that.
Yeah.
I mean, literally,
get
it wasn't approved.
Okay, so was that's a little bit of, I presumed that we would have to come back for paint, but the roof being existing, I would assume that would be grandfathered in, but the paint we would need approval of. But so I guess how would it work if it's already been painted? It's clearly flaking. How would you respond to that if
I think
the
that's
intent was to leave it?
I mean, yes, all those questions that you just brought up are also circling in my mind, but they're all factors that play into whether that metal roof can be replaced. I think the roofing can be replaced, but does it provide enough grandfathering in that people feel comfortable? It's been there for almost 30 years. It is found on campus. We could list everything you've said, and there's a bunch of pros there. And the con is the guideline says that, you'd go back to the original material, which is shingle. But there's a lot of factors that say it could be metal too. So like I said, I don't feel strongly either way.
Yeah, we clearly agree that we're asking for a variance from the guidelines. We think it's appropriate given that it's been in this condition for, 25, 27 years, and it matches the aesthetic around the campus. That's the the way we're pitching it. So.
Yeah.
And let me be clear too, that my advocacy for shingles is based on what I think is the best precedent for what you do with this historic building. But to Tyler's point, I mean, the metal roof has been there for 30 years. To me, if it had been shingle and you were asking for metal, I mean, I think that would be a no-go. But with metal to metal, I mean, that's definitely something I would consider. I'm not saying it's set in stone for me for shingles.
Yeah.
And as far as painting that roof, I mean, that's something you're going to have to ask the metal manufacturer and a painting company to see if you wanted to repaint it. But if you're wanting to replace it, that is probably the best thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you would want to see on this if you're might be persuaded for the metal I don't know if
Sorry, I was just going to clarify too. I think that if you're trying to decide between two equal options, I think the shingle would be a really good choice. But because it already has a metal roof, I think it'd be reasonable to use the color that you selected and replace it with that. So I think that to me it seems like the comments are more like if you were going to pick between the two, if you like you would be able to choose, and we like the shingle, but I don't think that it would be reasonable to say no to metal when it's been metal for 30 years. So I think that it's fine. It's just we kind of thought you were trying to maybe decide between two different looks,
Got it.
And an
Well, yeah.
option could be, is having it rendered, kind of like how you had the rendering showing what that one screening could look like. You could have it, the building and show it with the dark bronze standing seam or a dark composite roof so that it does show, differentiation, that sort of thing.
Okay.
That might be helpful.
Okay. Okay. All
Is
right.
that helpful?
I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm good. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. See you in a minute.
Come back.
All right. Let's move on to item number 6 here. Discussion of new construction and accessory structure and site alterations at 104 Lewisburg Avenue. Daniel Adelsek. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Perfect.
I just wanted to say thank you guys. It's been beautiful to move here to Franklin, Tennessee. I'm a California refugee. I was a little hesitant to admit that. But honestly, what you guys have done in this city in preserving the history, but also allowing the Franklin project, I'm like, what's going in there? I'm so excited. And yet to see so many beautiful places to walk and stuff. And I know you guys put a lot of time into it. So thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. The project that I have before you right now is the house that my family live in right now, 104 Lewisburg Avenue, not too far from here. The desire is to do what a lot of places in there have done already, which is add a DADU, ADU, I don't know what you call it, garage and dwelling accessory to the property. Part of that will require removal of some existing driveway, concrete, asphalt areas, and then having a new accessibility driveway to the unit itself. Probably not too much more. I'd say that most of the things that we're trying to develop it in accordance with the guidelines. I'm not sure that we have all the detail in there. It's kind of like I'll use whatever windows we need to use, whatever door we need to use. It's more like I just want to, get your feedback and everything on it, sort of as an iterative step in trying to get this built. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Elizabeth may have some comments for us.
Thank you. So a 1.5-story accessory structure is proposed behind the principal building located at 104 Lewisburg Avenue, and this application proposes to demolish an existing non-historic shed from the rear of the property. Additional imagery and information will need to be provided in the future applications to document the shed for demolition if it is indeed non-historic. If this is the same shed as in the National Register listing, it is a circa 1990 to 2000 prefab shed and is non-contributing. The removal of this shed would not negatively impact the property if it is this shed. So I will cover some of the high points from the review of the proposed accessory structure, but a more detailed review of all the items can be sent to the applicant, and staff would highly encourage a meeting to be set up with the applicant to review the application and notes from staff prior to another submittal. And so we would encourage the applicant to re-examine their application and ask that additional research be done to create a more compatible form with the principal building and surrounding historic accessory structure. As it is proposed, the accessory structure's front facade is not oriented parallel with the front facade of the principal building and does not meet the guidelines for orientation. The form is a little more complex and is not reflective of the simple form and design of the principal building and other accessory structures in the district, as it utilizes a form with elements not seen on the principal building, a more complex roof form, and varied proportions and designs for windows indoors. A shiplap siding with a 9-inch reveal is proposed. And a porch is proposed on the right elevation, which is located in an appropriate location as it is not visible from the public view shed, and it appears to replicate the front porch of the principal building. Additional information is needed to understand the specifications of doors, windows, materials, size, and square footage. Information about the overall height of the principal building is needed, as well as clarification on the footprint of the building to ensure the footprint of the structure does not exceed 50% of the building structure footprint. More information is needed to understand the proposed foundation materials and heights as well. There are a few zoning project considerations left by our zoning administrator to note that all requirements from the zoning ordinance for accessory dwellings will apply. It is unclear to staff if the footprint of the accessory dwelling garage will exceed 50% of the footprint of the principal structure. The property assessor states that the footprint of the principal structure is 1,794 square feet, so just a little more information to clarify that. And to be aware that any new portions of the driveway will need to comply with an ordinance requirement such as not to exceed 20 feet in width and remain 5 feet off of the property line. And then lastly, multiple garage doors on the same facade are required to have a minimum 2-foot separation between the doors. So thank you.
Okay. Writing some of those metrics down. All right, let's hear from, I'm going to start with Brian this time, whether you like it or not.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So welcome to Franklin. I have to
Well,
say
thank
that.
you. I appreciate that.
It's ever since I have lived here, more people are moving in,
I know.
and it's not going to stop. So I never go to there. I'll just say, I'm glad Franklin does smart growth.
Yeah.
So and I do give a lot of credit to our alderman and our mayor and our staff for that.
Sure.
And glad you're here.
Yes.
So I want to ask, and I would agree with staff, and I think it would be a good idea to get with staff and talk to them more about where you're going and kind of what's kind of in the district. And the reason I say that, because some of the views I see of the garage, they remind me more of a 2-story structure, more than a 1.5-story structure. And I think that's going to be kind of one of the issues that you may find doesn't quite meet some of the design standards for that neighborhood. But I want to ask you about the siding reveal just quickly. So on the home that you have, what type siding do you have? Do you know?
Looks to me like it's a concrete composite of some sort.
So that's
I don't know what the history of it
cementitious
is.
siding then. So it's a concrete. So it's been replaced. So we don't know what was originally there.
I don't know what was originally there. I have no history on the building at all. Yeah.
So, but probably if I had to guess on that structure, it was probably a 4.5 to 5-inch reveal is what was on the structure as far as the distance between each lap of the siding.
Oh, okay,
And now that reveal, that lap, is pretty wide on what you have, and I think you're asking for a shiplap that's 9-inch?
You know what? I don't think that I've specified what that is or that that's even in there. I think that's a detail that I would. By the way, you two have been amazing, so thank you so much. I definitely agree that that's probably good advice to do that, but I don't know the answer to that. I was just going to match. Again, mine's kind of like, I just need to learn what the guidelines are and what products are being used most commonly. I have no idea, I just don't know where to source it or things like that.
Sure.
And those are just some of the,
the
points that, we all think about and look in
helpful.
Franklin. And that's, kind of how Franklin kind of stays this charming little town.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would be, are you guys looking for me to match exactly what's on the building existingly, or is there a better option as far as siding, or even on the building itself? I love, of course, these old historic brick homes, and there's just a little tiny bit of that on my home, not enough that I felt like it was enough that I could, use that, but I was like, gosh, could I do 2 feet of, of sort of historic rock look or something like that, followed by the shiplap. Those are sort of like design questions. It's kind of like, again, for me, that's secondary. I just want to look as good as possible, and I just don't know what would be ideal from your perspective going forward. I do see a lot of the examples of what you guys have approved in the neighborhood, though.
Well, we appreciate your application, and I know that staff will be glad to meet with you and for some of the design guidelines. Thank
Okay.
you, though.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Holly, any thoughts?
Yep. I think it'd probably be safest to use something that's similar to what's already on there so you don't get like a ton of back and forth.
Yes, thank you.
That's what and I think if you have stone or brick and the foundation of your house, you could probably do that and it would be just fine. So
Thank you.
Bob,
I would think about the orientation of the garage, because if you look at a lot of the homes on your street,
Yes.
you drive down the driveway directly
Into it.
into
yeah.
it.
Totally open to the orientation question. I flipped it back a couple
Definitely
times.
really look at that orientation.
Okay. Totally good. Totally. I actually, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I almost had it. I think I had it drawn up wrong. Anyways, it's inverted.
Well, that's
yeah. So
the,
it's-
the guidelines actually specify that the garage doors are supposed to face the street,
okay.
which sounds crazy until it's behind the house. Then it's not so crazy because
Okay.
we don't like front-facing garages on like a new house on the front facade. But yeah, that it specifies that it should sort of be a straight shot in, and then the
Okay.
trick becomes how do you're either backing out or you have to provide some turnaround. So there's those
That is the
separation
problem.
requirements and all that play in. And I think zoning had some comments about some of that separation and setbacks, and
Well,
it can be done.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's been done, but that is sort of the big issue where you kind of go straight in, and then how do you back out and flip it
Yeah.
around without having a big piece of concrete go out into the thing? So,
Yeah.
I like grass and gardens,
Yeah, it's
as I'm
tough.
sure you guys do too. So it's kind of like we'll take a look at
Okay.
what we can do on that because with the orientation. So thank you, Bob.
Yeah. Madeline?
I actually have a question for staff on what, and you may have said this, so I'm sorry, but what makes it 1.5 instead of 2?
So based on the front facade image, it's the one story with the dormers, so that would make it 1.5. It doesn't appear to be a full 2 stories on the front facade. So
I would agree. It definitely appears to. It seems really large, but yeah, I'm going back and forth between the main house and the new one, and I think there's elements from the main house that could be carried over to make it make sense. What is the roof material, or do you know yet?
The roof material, I think it's just an asphalt roof.
Okay.
Yeah. There's metal over the entry roof, and then there's a little side thing that's metal as well. So there's a little side room, and that is a metal roof as well. So it's a mix of both.
Yeah, one of the, Brian, you may have an opinion on this, but one of the things that I'm noticing is like the style of the columns and then the style of the garage door itself. And then I guess the spacing between the doors. But maybe taking a look at the columns and how you would style those. It looks like you're trying to put stone at the bottom maybe. And then the garage door style itself being just period accurate.
Well, that's actually a really good question on that. I really didn't have a preference on what I use for the garage doors. Probably just use a normal garage door. Can we use a normal garage door, or does it have a specific style that we're supposed to use? Again, these might be Elizabeth questions. You probably could answer that for me, but I don't know the answer
Yeah.
to that.
yes, so for entrances, it should match what is seen in the district for garages, what was historically, what's more traditional with the style of garage doors used in the district.
Okay.
So if they're overhead or carriage style, it'll be depending on what's existing.
Yeah, and there's manufacturers every manufacturer makes a historic looking.
Garage.
And then there's materiality too. Some of them are stamped out of metal and they're a little less believable, and some of them are. There's steps all in between till you get to like a custom made wood carriage door, which is exorbitantly expensive. But there's everything in between, and a lot of the district has a mixed bag of those, but something that looks appropriate with the house and some of the other neighbors. I'm trying to think, just down from you, we just approved a garage that's being built right now. It's the Craftsman Bungalow. It's
112, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you might see what they had picked and we approved, and just find something similar that you like that has that level of detail and quality that would seem appropriate. It doesn't have to be a copy of theirs. It's just that type. Did you have anything else? Did I interrupt you?
No.
Okay.
that was it.
You see my notes here. Yeah, I think when I look overall at the form of the garage, and I've tried to be a stickler on this, your scale, the level to the floor heights, and as it relates to kind of where the bearing of the roof is. So on your second floor, it looks like you've got 2 or 3 foot tall kind of walls on top of the floor. So it raises that roof up, and that's what kind of helps provide you a little bit of extra headroom up there. Got to be careful about that, because all of a sudden it can contribute to kind of the idea that, well, it doesn't look like a 1-story or 1.5 anymore. It's kind of 1 1/4, then the attic, and so it kind of exacerbates the idea that we're creating extra volume upstairs, which we're all for you creating volume up there, but that's how we control it is, people could say, well, it's not a full 2-story, it's only got a 7-foot wall, but it sure would be a 2-story building. So look at that, and one of the things that can help you kind of cheat that height up is figure out exactly what height your garage really needs to be. I think you have 9'6". If that were 9, well, your garage door openers work, and you could use that 6 inches to kind of contribute to the upstairs. Those kind of things do add up. And look at, there's that 2-story portion on the back, which I think is the bed wall. I think the guidelines would probably recommend that being either a 1-story piece, and it even being shorter but wider, if that makes sense. It's all about that bearing height. I don't know if you can point up there, but see how much higher that roof starts than the main roof form. If that started lower but went further down, well, now it just looks like a crossing gable. And so there's these little tricks you could do that help bring the scale down, really make even the neighbors feel like it's 1.5 stories instead of 2 stories. But I don't think this is terribly far off from something that we would consider. And then windows and doors. I mean, you said you're not sure. I think the guidelines talk about double hung windows. I think there's some instances where casement windows, which are the kind that swing like a door, would be appropriate. And they're usually the smaller kind of accent windows. But traditional profiles for doors, they can have glass in them, but something that we'd see in the district. Double hung windows with historic profiles, casements that are more accent, smaller windows could be appropriate. And then just providing a little more additional detailing, like looking at your house now has white painted corner boards where the siding dead ends. The drawing doesn't show any corner boards yet, but as you develop that further, if you look in those pictures, it's sort of covered by that gutter, but there's white trim at the corners.
Oh, okay.
It's those little things that we would expect to look like it goes with the house would need corner boards. So just those little details will help you get where you need to go, and then historic certainly can provide all kinds of better guidance than we can, if that helps.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Any other specific questions you have?
No, I think this is kind of what I expected. I got to figure it out and try to learn the process and
Yeah.
iterate my way to getting where I need to get.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Perfect.
And
I'm
this
from,
is-
I'm from California too. They let me move here a long time ago.
Wow, I was impressed. You made your way through the world pretty well. Hey,
Yeah.
thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to.
Did you
Emily,
have something else,
No,
Brian?
no, just because this is all part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, it's how you throw out ideas. You know, my mom used to say you throw spaghetti against the wall, see if it sticks. Some things don't stick, they fall off. So this is just how you find out, you know, what. And at the end, when this is all over, you'll have a better product that you like even more.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate that. I didn't anticipate I was going one and done or anything like that on this. So, but I do. The feedback's kind of invaluable. So thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you so much. Daniel, have a good night.
Thank you.
Take a quick break. All right, let's take a 5-minute break. Does that get us long enough? So let's come back at 6 o'clock here and we'll jump into our last item if that's okay.
And we need to make sure those doors aren't locked because they may be.
The exterior doors?
I heard they were locked. That these weren't. Somebody said they were locked when they came in. Here, our last one, item number 7, discussion of new construction hotel and parking structure and partial demolition at 230 Franklin Road, the factory. And Benton is listed here, but he's got some comrades here.
So yeah, we were last with you all last month to get the recommendation to BOMA for the development plan. That is progressing. We're going through staff discussions and comments on the plan. We have a joint conceptual workshop this week, Planning Commission next month, so that's going to continue. In talking with staff about this, we really wanted to come back early and with anticipation that this is going to be multiple stages of DRC and in a progressive way. So this is kind of a start of that iteration. We wanted to come early. There was obviously we were getting into some of the details a little bit as we were talking about massing and the overall recommendation to BOMA. So now this is certainly the great time to start on that before we really get into the design. It will be, obviously we have to go through the development plan process before we can come back for a COA, but we wanted to get early feedback so we could incorporate that soon, and with anticipation we'll come back with progress. I have Reed Talley, who is my colleague with Holiday Properties, and Jess Chambers is with Centric. And so I'm going to I'll turn it over to Reed to kind of intro the hotel, and I thought we'd maybe start with that. We do have a little bit of a kind of a brief agenda. We thought maybe these are some items that have come up in the past that we would certainly like to hit. Obviously anything else that comes up, but
Okay. So your name's Reed?
Yes, Reed Talley. I need to push a button here.
Okay. Go ahead.
Nice to meet you all. As Benton touched on, most of the past discussion on the hotel has been massing, footprint, height, which has been great, and it kind of built the box for us to some degree. And so now as we're starting to get into it, the intent and the idea is to come here regularly and to start to just kind of narrow down that scope to where we can all work in the same direction. We understand what you're looking at, what you like, what you don't like. And so the idea here is that we can start with the big components: roof shape, windows, portico share, and facade materials were items that were touched on in past meetings, and kind of broad enough that we can get some early direction from you guys. And so not here to talk that much and walk you through it too much, but those are where we kind of start. I'm going to assume you guys kind of looked through the package, but if not, a really good place to start talking through these different components might be sheets 4 and 5.
You can use the clicker to
Okay.
put it on what page you want.
yeah, I think that the renderings are new. I don't know that you've seen these renderings, so these do provide a little bit more of a different view than the massing, block massing documents. So.
Right, and on the renderings, some of the things that are slightly different or refined, I guess. I'm not sure how do you use the laser pointer?
This red button, just click on it.
Perfect. So on past massing concepts, we just kind of showed a plethora of options, right? So we had a handful of different roof shapes for conversation, and in this instance, we made some choices, right? And so we went with one slope across the different massing, a combination of slopes and flat, that is reflected in the front facade. And so you can see here we have kind of a simpler front facade, and then that same roof shape is carried throughout many massing components of the roof. I'll open it up there. Any thoughts or questions, opinions?
Go through everything because staff has comments too. So just walk us through kind of what's different this time than what we saw last time, and then
Okay.
we'll have staff.
Perfect.
Would you want to do it by just the hotel first?
That's fine.
And
Yeah.
then we
Yeah,
can
just
do the parking structure?
Walk us through what's different. I see some of these new kind of darker masses, the stair tower, the portico share, I think, is a little different than what we saw before, and you may correct me. I don't.
Well,
A little bit,
I
just-
can actually.
So walk us through those, and then I want to hear staff's comments before we have a discussion back and forth here.
Okay, so this is the last one that you guys saw. Okay, so we have kind of a stair-stepped front facade that's very similar to Building 2 on site. Building 2 has a flat roof behind it, and so it makes a little bit more sense than it did in this instance. But it was a good start. We did keep the front or the roof shape the same on this north-south building, with the exception of the flat roof. When you get to the east-west facing building, we have sort of a two-sloped concept. And so we simplified it all. We have the one slope that, or the two-slope ridge carried through all these buildings. We have the portico share is generally the same. It's just colored now.
Okay.
It's
okay.
the idea was simple, kind of out of sight, nothing to kind of put a mass to it that is attention grabbing. So we kept with that.
By the way, with the portico share, that was pulled. Some of the ideas where there's the structural element, the historic element on Building 8 in the back. That was one thing that we talked with you all about probably a year or year and a half ago. We kept that. That's open structure with a metal roof, and it functions very much like a portico share. And then there's some other walkways around the site that are all covered. And so the idea is to play off of that. We do need and want a portico share for the hotel, but trying to play off of that more minimal. Yeah, that's a good look at Building 8 next to the carousel. So anyway,
Okay.
that's the. Anything with the windows?
Yeah. So windows. On this instance, we went back with some ribbon windows on the third floor. It was an idea to break it up, give it a little more character, rather than just a lot of punched windows. Add some monotony to it. And this ribbon window concept is echoed throughout the entire factory, and so it will be, I think, a pretty nice feature. In the facade materials. The facade materials were touched on during your past meetings, but this just adds some color to it. Primarily masonry. The idea of separating the buildings with some setbacks and recesses and different shapes to help give it that illusion of it was added to over time. Is going to be, I guess added to using this metal material, corrugated metal that you can see across the factory now. So you have it right here in the middle over the pedestrian alley and also in this recess. What that material is, right now we're envisioning to be the same corrugated metal as you see on Building 2 that was recently approved and installed, but that's right now just kind of a high level concept.
Facade, windows, roof, portico share.
I think that's all I
Okay,
have.
yeah, you got the
That's kind of
four.
the high level.
The 4 hotel items. Did you want to give us some comments?
I would be happy to. Okay, we'll leave it on this image. So, starting off with the roof profile, the guidelines recommend designing massing and scale of the building to be consistent with the historic buildings on the block face, and designing roofs to be flat and utilize parapets to be similar surrounding historic buildings. While a design to utilize a flat roof has come before the DRC, it was not an option that was complementary to the adjacent buildings on the site. And the proposed roof form is seen on the site and complements the existing buildings. Further, the flat roof would accentuate the height and mass of the building, and with the proposed roof form, it is able to conceal proportions of the height. Then let's move to the windows. This one's a good one. So the design guidelines recommend designing new windows to be compatible with the size, placement, rhythm, and relationship of solids to voids of those of nearby historic buildings, to maintain the vertically proportioned windows with traditional spacing patterns, maintain the traditional placement of window headers and sills related to the cornices and belt courses, use windows with historic profiles and dimensions, including traditional casement and trim, design windows to match the historic materials found on nearby buildings, recessed window openings on masonry buildings, and avoid reflective glass, tinted glass, or other treatments that inhibit views into the building. And the measurements of the existing windows should be provided to be compared to the proposed windows. As proposed, the first floor windows appear to be very large compared to the windows on the existing buildings, and it would be recommended to utilize a similar light pattern of the windows of the existing historic buildings. For the porte cochere, the proposed porte cochere is positioned on the front and right side of the building facing the empty parking lot. While the guidelines do not specifically comment on porte cocheres on commercial buildings, they do recommend designing a building to reflect its time while respecting key features of its context. It is suggested that the applicant studied the porte cochere placement where it could be tucked onto the side rather than on the front, and utilizing a lighter feel to the building component could be suggested. So for the facade materials, the proposed brick blends in what is seen on the factory campus. I know that we worked with David here recently to utilize some of the brick samples that is coming up, and I think it was Cotton Queen or one of the brick samples. Is that what is being proposed for this building as well?
We haven't gotten to that.
Okay. The design guidelines do recommend using brick or masonry materials that are compatible in size, profile, and detailing with historic materials. And the use of the black metal is seen elsewhere on the factory campus, such as around the Mafioso's building, which we just looked at earlier this afternoon. And so the use of metal on a building is not foreign to the site. Those are our comments.
Okay. Holly, you're up again. I keep trying to give people turns and yeah.
Okay, just a quick question. So the hotel looks different than last time. Am I right? Is that based on suggestions from us, or what? Or is it just what you guys?
No, this is the same massing, same height, same form. These are rendered, so they're the colors and really, I don't think a lot has changed other than the roof profile. The last iteration, and I think that is in this package, the last iteration is in this package. It shows a few different types of roof profile to kind of show some optionality. All were under the guidelines for height. Now we've rendered a more straight view that like this that we are suggesting for conversation.
And that the stair towers are new.
Stair tower was always there. I'm not sure that as the form changed much, it was always pretty well glassed, but obviously that's...
Yeah, the pokes out in the new version, which is...
We've had a couple of iterations. That's a conversation piece. We need to, I guess, talk about it from the floor plan perspective too. That's the stair that goes to the, there's a kind of a elevated outdoor bar kind of a setup.
Exit stair as well. So
generally it's very true to the last iteration you saw, but it's rendered. There's a few little tweaks here. So
the last version was to kind of put the pieces together for the conversation, and this is just taking it one step further and trying to put it together to continue.
Well, I think the stair idea is really interesting. Is it like is that see through? Like you can see the stair.
It's like a storefront.
It's like a curtain wall.
Yeah, I really like it. It'd be interesting to hear what you guys think. I feel like each time it's different, but I've liked all of them. So I'm just I don't really have a whole much to say.
Fair enough. Yeah. You always come back if you have another thought. Brian, did you have any discussion?
Just wanted to hear more from staff on the black roof form. As I understood it, that does not meet the guidelines for this.
The
Project.
flat roof.
Did you say
or
flat?
The,
I thought maybe to the black. So that
Oh,
first part was the black roof form.
yeah, so
And the flat, you could address those again too.
So the guidelines do recommend for new commercial buildings to utilize a flat roof, kind of like what is seen on Main Street. But since there aren't a whole lot of, the flat roof design has come to the commission, and that design just wasn't complementary to the other buildings on the site. So utilizing this kind of different roof design was complementary. I don't know if I commented on the specific use of the black roofing. I mean, it does, there are black screening panels all on the site, and also like this portion, as we mentioned earlier in the night, next to the Mafioso's building, I think it's the Harbor and Union building, it utilizes that same kind of black kind of addition on to that building. So utilizing this material isn't a new thing to the site.
Okay, thank you. And I want to kind of address, I think, some of the window patterns and spacing that I see. Most that I'm seeing seem to be pretty what you would see kind of around the factory. But what I'm seeing where the exterior staircase and then the bank of windows, it just looks like all windows. Is that what I'm seeing?
Right. Yeah. So what you're saying, and this is still what's happening here is you'll have the larger windows down on the ground floor where you have the lobby, right up
And those
above
are
that.
overhead doors, right?
Right. This is kind of looking open because there's going to be an element of openness to that to let the indoors and outdoors flow together.
So those are actually like a garage,
Those are like
garage
doors.
Correct.
Right. Second level, we'll have a we call it like a rooftop bar. It's a bar patio up there. We have some more work to do on that, so it really won't be exactly like you see here. But this is just, for the purposes of the next step, this is a good iteration. Then you have guest rooms above that on the third level. And so the windows is just a product of public space versus private space.
Okay. And the porte-cochere. So what, can you kind of walk me through, the idea behind that? Because I know part of it's at the front of the building and then it turns the corner. And,
Right.
kind of what's the purpose of that turning
Yeah.
the corner like that? I mean, not being on the front a little bit, looks to me like it might be better to be off the front, but maybe that works that way. And I just want to hear why that is.
Well, most of the people should be coming from the east, but not everybody. And so the idea is that if you're coming from the west, down Liberty, you have a better method to finding the hotel. Usually when you go to a hotel, you're looking for the porte-cochere, right? And in this case, we don't want that kind of traditional thing, but something to grab your attention, just to say, all right, this is where I pull up and how I enter the hotel is what we're shooting for.
And the part that that runs in front of the building, that's more for pedestrian access?
No, so the front. See what I'm gonna switch slides to. So there will be. Show you here. So you'll pull in the front right, and it's not terribly deep. You'll get out of your driver's side door in a covered area, and this allows 2 vehicles to queue up right there. And so, yeah, the front door will be likely right here on the east-facing side. But again, the idea is that you have some sort of visibility if you're coming from the west. It gives you some pedestrian, just a more pedestrian covered area right out front there to kind of queue up and enter the lobby.
Emily, can you pull up where the facade is shown like from human scale, actually instead of showing that part from an aerial view? And I think there's one other. Yeah, I think that's it. And if you kind of zoom in on that, you're saying that the entrance is on this side?
The entrance is, you can't see the entrance right here.
It's on the east side, yeah. This element here that you can see, it's an abbreviated portion of the porte cochere, but it's kind of an anchoring to help pull you into that location because the entrance in this image is in the foreground.
So that is then pedestrian access. In that part of the porte
Yeah.
cochere,
Yeah.
that's the pedestrian.
Correct. It's on the
walkway,
sidewalk, that's right.
And it's in front of the building a little bit,
A little bit in front of the
and
building.
then
yeah.
turns the corner
Correct.
on the east side.
Correct.
Correct. So there's a, what we're looking at is from the south elevation, right, is the main facade, and then the east on the other side. Yeah, there's a portion of the porte cochere on the south elevation.
And what do you see the material of this as far as the posts and the beams and then the roofing material?
The current idea is to use steel, as you see here on the factory, in as many locations as makes sense. I would think that right here, it makes a lot of sense to use steel. Haven't gotten to the topping material, what that is yet.
Okay. If you recall the walkway to get into Building 13, you know which building I'm talking about. It's on Liberty Pike elevation, so the south elevation, and so there was that was a replacement of before there was a kind of a, the peaked metal. You remember that? Yeah, and we came back with a flat, cleaner look. That is very much what this is playing off of in this rendered view.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? No? Madeline?
I really like the front of the building, and I feel like it makes sense. It looks like in the black and white blocking renderings that we've seen before. I'm gonna bring it up again, but the staircase was tucked in. Now it's protruding out. I feel like it looks out of place. And then you said that second building, what did you say? It's like a rooftop bar, patio bar?
Right. Yep.
Okay. I like on, I guess, the right elevation that it's separated by brick. The windows are. Is that possible with what you're trying to do there on the left?
Yeah, I mean, I would asterisk this bar area. We are still working on the plan. A lot of this area is going to be, what happens on the inside is going to affect what's happening. We'll come back to that, and this will be a little different, I'm sure. But you're after, a little bit more separation. We can accomplish that, I'm sure.
The brick separation.
Right.
And then the third building with the flat roof, I don't mind the corrugated on the outside, but on the right elevation, it just looks like it's floating, and again, it just feels out of place for the site, in my opinion.
That is over the alley entrance.
Yeah, the
pedestrian
walk-through, the breezeway. I'm assuming you walk through there to the other side, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's the idea there is a couple of things. One, we do want to highlight that as a public thoroughfare. We very much want the public to feel that they can walk through the building at that point, and even if they're not a hotel guest. So it's important for us to highlight that. The other reasoning and how we got to this point is the idea of breaking up the building so that it kind of looks like it's cobbled together over time. So
Yeah, and I do like that idea for sure. I just
Yeah.
feel like that section feels out of place, but I feel like you could still accomplish what inviting people to walk through. I just feel like it needs a little work there.
Is it the parapet maybe that's
I don't think it's the parapet. I think it's the columns underneath or how it's worked below. It just feels like it's floating.
It's I think what you're pointing out is we projected that piece out a little bit, and so it looks like almost like a cube that shifted without a mass beneath the cube to kind of support it
Like
visually.
urban, contemporary.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea there was, whenever that was coming through, it was how can we best separate and break up this bar, right? And so that really did it. It's just maybe bring it back a little bit and find a way to kind of.
Is it the column, you think? If it were just kind of clear open, and you still think it's?
It almost looks clear open already, even though I know you have those supporting beams.
Can I ask? Is it from both sides, or is it just the other side? This one is recessed.
It's really
and the
just
other-
that side, that right elevation. I feel that way about the other side. I mean, I can't really see the bottom of it though, on the left elevation. Like rendering.
Yeah, there's another.
Is there another one?
Yeah, there's another one that's.
Oh, I see it. Here
from
we go.
an aerial.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, same kind of thing. It's doing the same thing. I just feel like it looks out of place. It's the bottom.
Okay. While we're on that image, can we talk about that stair a little bit more? So you mentioned that. Reed, how does the floor plan interact in that situation? Do we need the stair to be located like that, or what's the?
Yeah, we do need the stair there. But that's the idea of this, right? Is if we can understand where the heartburn is, then we can work to find a solution that doesn't get rid of it necessarily, but might solve the problem and in the end make a better product.
I will say that the design guidelines recommend, tucking, exterior stairs, on a less visible facade. And this is a unique case that all these facades are going to be visible. But I did want to offer that what the guidelines say.
I'm not sure it's an exterior stair. It's a enclosed conditioned space. It's just glass. I think the guidelines are talking about like a pressure treated deck stair, or a stair, like
It was
a
kinda like
utility uncovered stair.
Like a fire escape,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, that's not.
One of the features of this, and the reason that is poked out a little bit, is we want people to feel invited up there, right? This is supposed to be another community space, and so when you're in the courtyard downstairs, and you kind of see some activity going from the stair up to probably a patio, and during the nice weather, you probably have an opening in the doors up there as well, and so it makes the whole area feel a little bit more inviting.
I don't think I would mind it if it wasn't protruding out. I don't think I would mind it being glass, because then it would be replicating the windows that are there. It just feels out of place. Like I feel like it needs brick or something. Like it.
Right.
It just feels a little out of place.
We can keep studying that for sure. That's definitely on the list.
Anything else, Madeline? Bob, you have some ideas?
I don't have a lot of much to say other than I don't have any issue at all with the size of the windows, because you're wanting to get light in there, and it gives the essence of the rest of the factory. It's just got that look.
You mean in general?
In
across-
general, yeah. And it's a completely, even though you're wanting to make it fit in, it's still a complete new entity. So, I'm sure your interior is needing the size of these windows. The staircase, I don't know, either way. I mean, I can understand it, and I can visualize myself walking down it and looking at the rest of the factory. I can understand you're wanting to have that portico share on the side, so it is visible from east and west. But it still gives the front of the factory on this side its own look. so you're not detracting from it. So that's, I like the way it's delineated, all the different mini buildings that are all attached. So those are my comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll follow up here. You know, the roof profile changes, I think, that you made to that back building are good. I mean, that's always been a little peculiar, and I think for it to just be simplified just
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
The windows, they are big, and here's what I'd say is a lot of those early factory buildings were probably born out of utility. So they're light, their ventilation, but their sizing a lot of times were based on the limitations of the material, right? So it's, you know, they're big on the factory too, but they're also broken into pieces, and there's some extra kind of reinforcing around the operable portions. I think thinking of it in a way that you're replicating those limitations, not exactly copying what's over there, but to have aluminum storefront that's 16 feet tall and 12 feet wide, it's like, yeah, we can do that out of aluminum storefront, but it seems disingenuous to what maybe would have been some of those size limitations of that era. Does that make sense? So thinking of it, even if the windows are 16 by 12, and I'm just making that up, I don't know what they are. Even if they are, and that's what you want them to be, breaking them into pieces and components where it's not a shared frame, but it's actually like a unit, mold to a unit, and breaking it up, because that's what you would have had to do. So, you know, I think it'd be short-sighted to show up and go, well, we've got walls of aluminum storefront, and there's not any delineation for proportion and scale and kind of that human scale. I think that would be kind of a miss on the windows. Porte-cochere, I like its thinness, kind of crisp, clean. I like its location. I can imagine this bleeding over into the front, being where an Uber picks somebody up or something. I mean, it's got some utility. And I keep thinking about this whole campus was built out of utility. They didn't build stuff just because it looked cool. They built it because they needed something. It needed to do a job. So I like that. I think when I look at the renderings, there's a whole lot of columns holding that thing up. So I'm like, man, if you could like lose half of those, it all of a sudden just becomes thinner. There may be some utility in having a center column in the porte-cochere so that people don't pull down the middle. But on the side, there's a middle column, and I'm like, you know, we can span 24 feet with a steel beam. You can span 30 feet pretty easy. So looking at the quantity of those and which ones you really need could help just make it just less of a touch point.
That's good.
Facade materials, the brick and the metal, I like all of that. Obviously, we want to see them eventually, what they are. We know what the metal is because we've seen it, but what's the brick going to look like? When it comes to some of these more modern feeling elements, the stair tower, this black box that interjects itself, I actually like them the way they are and what they're doing. I think it says that this is new and different and not trying to be copycat. And there's a lot about this that you could go, well, they tried to make a version of what's already here, which in my eyes would be antithetical to preservation as a whole. We should know when we come on campus that that's new, that's old. And I think it does some of that without being everywhere. So I don't want it all copycat. I don't want it all modern. I think this is a good blend. And what you've broken up here into pieces is a good thing. I think it really steps itself up from the road height-wise, which is good. I think the porte-cochere wrapping the front might even help that a little bit because there's a 1-story level, 2-story level, and a 3-story level, and it steps away from your eye. I think that's good. I don't mind the stair tower. Again, it comes back to the details. If it's 40 feet of aluminum storefront, I'm going to go, you know, no bueno. It's just too much. But if it's done in a way that can be kind of spindly and thin and reflect the character of the factory, but still being a modern interpretation of it, I think that would be successful. I was trying to listen to Madeline's thoughts on this, what I'm going to call the hyphen there. It does look like it's floating. I don't mind that, but part of it's because it is, visually speaking, it looks like it's resting on the two buildings. I know it has columns under it, but at the edges, it just dies into brick. I think you might look at and bring us what it looks like to have legs on the edges.
Right.
I like it how it is, but maybe everybody wants to see some legs so that it looks like it's grounded in some way and not floating.
We'll get some different perspectives on it as we kind
Yeah,
of get further
yeah.
along to kind of show what's really happening
Yeah.
there.
Again, I like the airiness, floating nature, because it's a dark mass and it's boxy, right? It's kind of a bold statement in that regard, even though it's a color and texture that probably takes a back seat. But the floating nature of it just says this is a new building. It's just different than over there, and the Department of Interior standards tell us it's supposed to be decidedly different interpretation with modern materials or traditional materials, which is what you're doing. So I don't have a problem with that. What else did I write? Black hyphen. Light patterns we talked about. Yeah, and I guess my closing thing, I said, the factory was built on this idea that they just built things as they needed them for a certain purpose, right? Just kind of cobbled together to, like the conveyor canopy that's back there. They built that to move something. It has like a train track up in the ceiling. As you're proceeding through this, I could see you all using that rationale for the decision making. It's like, yes, this kind of has a cobbled together nature, but it's created an asymmetry in things that we see on the factory. It's like, well, it's a symmetrical building, but then there's this little thing that peeled off the edge because they needed something.
Right.
Those are the things that make the building charming and kind of unpredictable. And I think these little moves that you've done have done that in some regard. So I like what you presented.
Thank you.
The window thing is the one thing I just
Okay.
check into those. I mean,
Yep, absolutely.
I just don't know what size it might be perfectly fine.
Right.
But a side by side of maybe one of those front where you got the tall lobby windows next to maybe one of the standard factory windows, and just go, hey, it's 10% bigger, or they're the same size, or whatever could help us just judge it, because I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the hotel before we go to the parking garage? All right, let's go to parking garage.
Jess, you want to?
Yeah.
Take
So we just were looking for your feedback on a couple of items. The first being whether we're interested in an open railing on the top level. What that would have, it would reduce the massing of the parking garage, but then the consequence of that is being able to see cars on that top level. And then the other option is to have a solid parapet wall on that top level. We do have other options in here that kind of show, so this view shows what that would look like on the backside, that open railing on the top level. You can see up here. And so we did a couple of studies. And so what we're proposing is to have the open railing on this side, and then the solid parapet wall on the Franklin Road side, so that you can hide the cars on the main side, and then you break down the volume of the parking garage on this back side. The second option is the second thing we want to get feedback on is the facade materials. So whether you guys are interested in the brick and including some of the metal paneling that is used around the rest of the campus, or if solid masonry feels like a better fit for this. And then the third is the location of the stairs. And so we have a couple of studies of that. Where we've landed right now is what's shown here. So in the back corner of the garage, and then kind of along this back alleyway in the center of the garage. And those were placed, one, for code issues with egress in the garage, and then two, trying to get that as far from your Franklin Road view shed, the least amount of visibility from Franklin Road.
Yeah, that stair on the right, that's that north elevation. That's the one that you can see from the road. The stair on the left in this image, you cannot see from Liberty, Pike, or Franklin Road. So the stair that came up in conversation is, that one, the north elevation one. So we did move it out of the way so it's not prominent. There's some imagery and some slides if we were to keep going, where you can see glimpses. But at one point we did talk about whether maybe, there's a view of the sloped roof condition as a potential option. I think one thing it would be great to get feedback on that stair in particular, any type of, like, the roof profile, the location. It does fall on a ramp, as you can see in some of those images on the bottom there. So it is tricky in getting the area around it level, and so if we have flexibility to shift that, in this case, to kind of plan east to the right there, closer to building 5 and closer to Franklin Road, that helps us manage those grades. So anyway, I think is that it, Jess? Yeah. And
Okay. Emily, let us know what you all have here.
Yes.
Comment-wise.
So we had it, the first one is the parapet versus the guardrail. And so the use of the parapet wall mostly screens the cars from the top of the structure from the right-of-way. Let's see, let me get to the one rendering. Okay, let me do this and we'll zoom in. So this kind of shows us if it were to be just kind of the cable guardrail on the screen right now, but then if it were to utilize the parapet, it would screen the cars a little bit more, and both of the options do meet the design guidelines for the height. So the parapet would, address some of the concerns from past historic zoning and DRC meetings. Let me go back to the presentation mode. The stair location and the roof profile. So the height of the stair tower does exceed the design guidelines recommendation, but it has reduced its height from the first rendition, and so that is excellent, but it still exceeds it. For the facade materials, we wanted to clarify with the applicant of where the metal paneling might be used. Would it just be on the stair towers? Would it be on other elements?
Right now, what we're imagining, and you can see it a little bit. So just be on that top level, where it's kind of reminiscent about other buildings in the factory, where you have the top upper portion of the building is to be metal panel.
So kind of like mimicking the screening.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is to kind of help make it feel less massive a little bit as well, with a lighter material on the top.
Okay. Is that what you got?
Yep.
Okay.
Can I, one
Go ahead,
other
Ben.
clarification on the facade. Showing brick, we would like the ability to obviously do brick, but it would be nice to have the optionality to have thin set brick and precast panels. We're considering this being a precast garage. We're looking at a couple of scenarios. One could be cast in place, but precast is more efficient from a constructability perspective, and to have thin set in spandrel panels would would be a more efficient way for us to construct this and obviously still have the same look. It would be brick, but thin set brick and a precast panel, as you know, but still could match the colors and we could review samples too. But anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Madeline, you want to start us?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the stair tower goes, I feel like y'all have really worked to cut that down, and it looks okay. I do think with the railing versus the parapet facing Franklin Road, I definitely vote for the parapet. Well, I'm not voting, but you know what I mean.
Don't say vote.
Scratch that.
Right, Blake?
But yeah, I like the parapet better than the rail. I don't like seeing the cars. As far as the mixture of materials, I like that idea too.
Okay.
Did I cover everything? I think so.
Okay. Fair enough. We can come back if you have other thoughts. How about Bob?
I agree with Madeline. I like the parapet, brick parapet on the front. And whatever you're discussing on the back. Just with the, what do you call it, precast?
Yeah.
As long as the brick matched
Yes.
brick around it, I have no.
It is real brick. It's a thinner profile facade. It's cast into the precast panels, spandrel panels, and then it's more. It's all mortared too. It looks it's brick.
Looks the same.
Yeah, it's more the means and methods of putting it together. It's if we build this as a precast parking garage, it's much cleaner and efficient to do it that way. So.
And driving multiple times this weekend around that area, I mean, you'll see the brick just from like in that one vision where the trees are in the front over to where the entrance is in the front. That's really the only place you're going to see. If you're in front of that building in front, you're not going to see it. If
You mean
you're
from
on
Franklin Road? Yeah.
Liberty, you're not going to see
Right.
it.
Right.
So.
Right.
Okay. Holly?
I think the brick makes it very massive. Have we considered at all anything else, or is it needing to be brick just because of the other buildings? Because the factory is like a mix of windows and metal and brick. Is there anything lighter weight, that some combo or anything, rather than being so heavy?
I don't know. Let's talk about that. I think the idea was that I think that somewhere along the way we felt that the guidance was to follow the aesthetic that had been created with the garages downtown on 2nd Avenue and 4th Avenue. I'm not sure if there's any requirement. Maybe staff can comment on that. I don't.
There are some material requirements on parking structures. We can check into that.
Well, one thought about the examples from downtown, those are meant to look like the Main Street buildings that are like 1900 or around then, and solid brick. And the factory seems a lot more of a lightweight type of building. So I don't know if there's any way that you guys could come up with an option that's some sort of combo that's just less heavy, maybe. I don't think to me, it's not so much the height so much as just the heaviness of it and just being so massive.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Brian? I didn't forget you.
So it wouldn't come as a surprise for me to say that I don't want cars to be seen from Franklin Road. So definitely, if the garage is going to be at that height, a parapet. So, but let's talk about from the Franklin Road view. So if I'm looking behind what is the office building, which we discussed earlier, and I see the roofing material of that, looks like a single-story structure, that's a metal roof, isn't it? What is that roofing material? And that is the roofing. So whenever you see from Franklin Road, the garage that's located behind this building, you see how many feet of that garage will you see above that building?
Yeah. above
Basically
the-
where the parapet is that what we're thinking?
And a little bit of that top level.
Yeah, I know we did. We have an exhibit that we created. I know that I'm not sure if it's in this package.
So what I was just
Yeah.
thinking is that, of course, there are mixture of materials at the factory, and we've used
Yeah.
metal screening before on the top. Well, I mean, could we see a rendering where we might see, rather than the parapet being out of brick, it may be in like that metal screening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that it kind of blends with this roof just a little better
see
and
what you're saying.
hides
Yeah.
the massive structure behind it. That's the only thing I can think of on that.
Yeah.
And, to Holly's point, I mean, that might help bring down the massing of that large brick building now with this parapet that's on it too. But that is my main concern as far as the view shed of Franklin Road and where that's concerned, more so than what we're seeing on the other sides of that parking garage.
Oh, Brian, to that end, the screen idea, I've seen parking garages over by Carruthers. I'm not sure if McEwen or Liberty Pike, but they almost look invisible, like they have some sort of screening or metal or something, and they very, very lightweight looking. So I think something like that might end up being less obvious than the solid brick.
It'd be nice to see both renderings, when you come before us.
Okay.
I think the guidelines read that you're supposed to use materials found on site, but then we've got a mixture of stuff there. So I'd get with staff again, and like Kelly said, there's some zoning stuff, and just see what's available. Interesting thought from Brian there. I think that's worth looking at for all of us to have. What if that you got two different parapet heights happening here because the ramp, right? But to see kind of that upper level, which you've got sort of a rendering of that metal on the backside, that was an option. I have been thinking about ever since, I think your name's Jess, right? Mm-hmm. Jess mentioned maybe parapet in the front and a rail in the back, which is curious to me. Could you go to the rendering with the metal on the back?
That one, or do you want the actual color?
The colored one with the metal panel. Yeah, I like that. So if that black area were rail, all of a sudden that parking garage maybe looks 2 stories from this side-ish, massing-wise. I mean, there'd be cars up there, but I think it might feel totally different in the back if that were just a rail. And then if the other side is treated like this, but solid down and kind of close that up and it really looks like a roof screen panel, well, you may not see much of any car. And so I'm not sure where the balance lands there, but I like that. And then, the precast panel idea, I've seen that many places, and it works pretty well. I think the big thing for me is those things usually go up in like a segmented section, so
Right.
it's 12 feet wide or 10 or something. There's always a vertical joint all the way across that, and the brick folks will tell you that, and masons will tell you need joints anyways, but it's usually more like 20 feet or something. And then there's some horizontal joints at certain increments. So you start to get a little different feel with that, but I just think this building's in the back too. From any of these vantage points that are public right-of-ways like Franklin Road, you're not going to see those joints anyways just because it's so far away. But I'd be curious to see what those limitations are and what that does to the facade of the building, right? How it gets divvied up, and to the other commissioners' points, like if it's a different material, I mean, the garage is concrete structure. I mean, columns, the driving surface, everything's concrete. So there's ways to mask that, but it's still concrete guts inside. But I'd be curious to see what what options are out there to go on the concrete.
And then locating where the caulk joints are to minimize their
Yeah.
appearance.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some joints. It just depends on
Yeah.
what they can swing in there. When you were talking about the metal, I thought, well, maybe they're going to try and do the stair tower out of metal. This building is pretty close to kind of a pure rectangle. So I was like, man, there's not really a good place to start and stop all that, right? Like if it were the stair tower in metal, do we have any inside corner to die that into? Maybe little reveals and things, but I was concerned about that. And oftentimes it's just easy to stay really simple and clean. But I like everybody's ideas of seeing a little bit more of what the options might look like. And I really like the idea of the metal panel on Franklin Road side. I think it diminishes itself well, blends with the roof better. And maybe nothing on this side, like a cable rail, because it all of a sudden might feel or look two-story, which like pulling that mass off the top a little bit. But that's my thoughts. Let me see if I have any other joints. Pure rectangle, I said that. Yeah. Anything else? Did you have something?
I have
Alan? Go
one
ahead.
other thing. After Brian's comments, I was thinking the exact same thing about swapping those, but I had a question for you. Jess, did you say something about the railing back there giving y'all extra parking room? Did I make that up?
No.
Okay.
Talking about the way that it reduces the volume, I think, is that what you were
Oh, okay,
referring
maybe-
to?
maybe
Yeah,
that was
it
it.
has a lighter look. It's not as tall.
Yeah. I totally agree with what Tyler said, and after hearing Brian, thought the same thing of having the back side be the rail and the other side be what we're looking at right now. I thought on one side, I think it's technically the left elevation, maybe? It's where you see this one.
Uh-huh.
I was just thinking, I can't really tell from here, but and maybe fully rendered would help. I'm wondering if I really want to say this. If that, if in between could be another opportunity for the metal, like that.
In
it's
between
just
the stair towers?
because it goes in and across, right?
Mm-hmm.
In lieu of
Maybe.
brick on those two
Maybe
facades.
that it was just a thought, but yeah,
Interesting.
potentially.
Okay. Yeah.
And Benton, I forgot to give any feedback on the stair
Stair.
tower location. It was at the far east corner originally, right?
Yeah, we've had a couple of locations. One, if you're looking at this view, is tucked to the right there, close to that adjacent building.
Yeah, that's that far original
Yeah,
east
we've
side.
moved it off. I think it's appropriate to move it off.
Yes.
It gets the view of the tower more out of sight. At one point, it actually was on that plan east elevation as you're looking now, instead of the plan south elevation. So we did move it to the plan south. I think, and I'll let Jess come, I think that the south elevation is still fine, but it does fall on a ramp. And so if we were able to move it to the plan east a little bit closer to that driveway opening, I think that it helps a little bit with grades, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the feedback I wanted to get from you all is
I think we'd entertain looking at it. It helped that one kind of view from Franklin Road. You could see that tower just a tiny bit.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
And obviously, the more you move it east, that comes up a little.
Yeah.
If it were a subtle shift, like it was going to be like 4 or 5 feet, it makes the whole garage work. And I don't think that's necessarily a deal breaker, but we probably want to see it and what it does. Like, hey, if we move this 10 feet this way, it goes up 3 feet higher. Here's what both
Yeah.
of those look like, but it solves some logistical issues.
If it was
I think we'd
metal
look
also.
at it then.
Right.
That's a good point.
But if it's move it all the way back to the corner, or it really exacerbates that kind of peeking up from the front, then I'd say that's that's a step back.
And there is, Jess, can you go forward one slide? I think it's this one. Yeah, you see the roof on that stair. So this was the image on the left. The one on the right, I would disregard that. That's the one on the right is on a different elevation that we are not presenting here. That's just something that was asked in previous DRCs. But the one on the bottom left, that roof profile. So this was something that we explored early on. I'm curious. I think you had asked for that look.
Yeah.
I'm curious if anybody else has any opinions on that, because if it could potentially reduce the view from Franklin Road.
Well, I think when I mentioned sloping the stair tower roof, it was at the corner
Mhm.
and it was turned 90 degrees. So it would have sloped from the alley back up, and that has a look,
Okay.
that's maybe different from that.
Got it.
I don't, like I said, there's all kinds of utilitarian little shapes and doodads all over the factory. And that would be one of those things like, well, we're keeping the height down, but on one end we got to walk into this thing, but then we start walking down. And so it responds to its use. I don't like it as well as the flat one. It's still too tall on one side. It's not like we've accomplished all of a sudden meeting the guidelines. It's just, does it look better and does it diminish the view? I don't know that it does. It might even be more peculiar and distracting than just letting it be a little too tall. Yeah. So I'm indifferent to it. If it solves something for you, great. If it doesn't, I like the other version aesthetically.
Yeah.
I think it just doesn't draw attention to itself. That does, in my opinion.
I want to go back to the thin brick system. And the question is to staff. I mean, anywhere in the historic zoning overlay, have we done a thin brick system, where you can see caulk between that's what's, I guess, in between each panel is a type of caulk, more than a mortar? Is that usually what they put? I mean, and what would the guidelines say to a thin brick system?
I don't think that we've approved a thin set brick like what's being proposed since I've been here with the city. I know that the guidelines recommend, matching like the width and, the profile of the other like masonry that's on the site. So it kind of gets at that.
I don't know if it's an actual caulk that goes, I thought you could just hang it off the structure and then it just has a reveal in between each panel.
If it doesn't need to be waterproof, you don't have to do anything. But
Yes,
it's
I don't think you would see
hole.
a caulk line.
It's just a void then.
Correct.
And so you can very well see the rectangular panels that
You
go
will
up.
be able to see them, yes. We could provide some imagery.
Yeah, I think that additional imagery just to show what it would look
Yeah,
like, that
other
would be
place it-
helpful, but
Yeah, there's when Tyler, when you were bringing that up, my thought was that some of the way we've designed the facade there that has some natural breaks on those kind of column piers, that it felt like the panels could kind of fit in those sizes, but we'd have to confirm what a typical panel size would be, and then where do those joints fall, and if that's we can talk more about it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some online images, of other garages built like that. I mean, you can distinctly see the panels in many that I saw, and some were caulked, with a very large caulk bead. But that just doesn't feel like the historic district with that look.
Yeah, that was kind of my concern, is does it aesthetically pull off what it's supposed to and replicate what it's supposed to? And it has some joints and there's lots of pictures, so we'll look at them and see what it looks like. And the outside corners are also hard to pull off with the thin brick, just because there's not that thickness to turn corners, so you don't see the end of one brick and it really toothed together the same. So it's just a little different thing. But explore. Holly mentioned looking at all kinds of materials. I mean, there's straight up concrete out here on campus. a lot of the base of the buildings are just big concrete plinths and stuff. I mean, maybe there's some variety that feels right of that. I'm not opposed to that. I want to see all of it. If it makes sense, bring it. Let's look at it. But yeah, the parapet stuff, I think we have some consensus here. But bring us some options, and we'll be able to see them all. This was good to see options that you brought here.
Yeah.
I have one last comment before we leave this image. But if you look at the bottom left, it almost already looks drawn corrugated or in a metal material. And then if you look at the right image where we're talking about creating, like bringing what you had on the back
Forward.
up there, would that structure becoming the metal and that coming to the front hide the tower better? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're saying that guardrail kind of looks like corrugated metal the way it's shown, and so
No, the area in red on the left. So she was talking about other opportunities to introduce that metal material. And I had mentioned that space. It looks like it's almost already drawn.
It was because this was a previous iteration we had done.
Okay.
With it being metal on the top.
Well, now that we've pulled that from the back to the front for the parapet,
yeah.
and if that became the metal as well, it may hide it better. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would like to see
If
it.
the stair becomes the same material, it'll all look the same anyways. It won't
Right.
matter.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good feedback. Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Any other questions from you all?
I'm good.
Feel
Yeah.
good? Okay.
you.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
so
all.
much.
You have any announcements?
We do. This is the last DRC meeting in this space. And so, starting February 10th, it'll be our next Historic Zoning Commission meeting. Will be at Eastern Flank, and it's 1368 Eastern Flank Circle. So,
Okay.
that's it.
Say goodbye.
Take a group photo.
I don't want people to know I was here. Just kidding.
Let's say your purple big gulp stain is
Oh, man. I spilled a bright Pepto-Bismol pink smoothie from Smoothie King, a huge one, all over Jim Roberts' pants. And I said, "We got to take a break." He goes, "Oh no, we got to take a break." So,
I remember that.
me too.
Day one, right?
Yeah, it was not good. All right, we are dismissed.